How's everybody this morning?
Good.
Good. How are you, John?
Okay.
Hey, Greg, I just have a problem with my Apple Magic Mouse. It just stops sliding around. It jiggles around a little bit, but it doesn't slide around. It was working fine, and now it's not working fine. Did something go wrong with the optics on it, or what?
You're talking. Is it a wireless one?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you might want to do? Yeah. Okay. What you might want to do is power it off. Flip the switch on the bottom of it off. I have a tendency to leave mine on all the time.
I do too.
And then wait 5 or 10 seconds, and then turn it back on. And you might have to go into system preferences and disable it and re-enable it again. You'll reacquire it through Bluetooth again.
Doing that
once in a while they will get a little squirrely. You're right, they do. But for the most part, they're pretty reliable, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's been. This does happen, every few days where it just stops sliding around, and you got to coax it and beg it and feed it more coffee and all kinds of stuff.
I like this. I like this Magic Mouse a lot. My real gripe is, as I've gotten fatter, gotten older, and gotten neuropathy in my fingers and stuff. Although I'm starting a health management deal on Monday, being monitored by the doctor and all this kind of thing. So we'll see how that works. I have a friend of mine who lost 93 pounds in 8 months.
Wow.
And looks tremendous. And so I'm looking to do something along those lines too.
Cool.
I went to my first get together yesterday and picked up all the food and all that kind of baloney. But one of the things I have a hard time with this particular mouse is because there's no distinctive buttons on it.
Right.
I can't feel whether my finger's touching the center, the left, or the right.
Oh, really?
So like when I'm using, I have to either look down at it or I have to watch on the screen whether I'm getting a regular point. But if I want to get the right mouse click, I miss it all the time. So what I'm thinking about buying is some of that little thin tape they sell, like chart pack type crap.
Yeah.
And literally putting a stripe down the center so that I can at least feel the left side or the right side with my finger. Yeah.
That would give you some tactile feedback, but there's another way to do it too. Do it
What's
the old-fashioned way with you're right-handed, I guess. With your left hand, hold down the control key and then just control.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm so used to using the double mouse thing that.
Yeah.
Hey, we got Janine on, and I see that we've also got Frank on. How you doing, Frank?
Is Frank's on?
Good morning, Frank. I see Frank.
Yeah.
Hi, Janine.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Frank.
Okay.
Hi, Janine.
Yeah.
Morning, Janine.
Good morning, everybody. Hello.
Hello there.
Hello.
Janine, are you still up in Oregon?
You betcha. It's beautiful up here. We have a little smoke from the fires right now, but other than that, it's really nice. I invite anybody that wants to come up here to come, and you can visit us. We have a room in the house. You can stay. It's so nice up here. We're right on the river.
If I could get enough members spread around the country, we could just move from one week to the next week to the next week to the next week and mooch off everybody. That'd be a really good deal.
That would be fun.
Mouse is normal. But
does it look okay now, Ted? Does the mouse work okay now?
It does, but not because I turned it off and on. That's why I want to give the group some feedback.
Okay.
I turned it back on. It reconnected to the Bluetooth. However, it was not improved. What I did was I took some towel paper, paper, and cleaned the lenses, stuck it inside and cleaned the lens, and that did it.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, that's a good possibility. One of the issues I run across mine is I've got a little mouse pad, one of the not a fabric one, but one of the one that's covered in the plastic cover or whatever, and I'll forget about the crud that builds up on the bottom of these bars sometimes, and it'll slide around funny on the screen. And I just got to, flip it over and take my fingernail and kind of scrape the crud off the little black bars. And that seems to make a big improvement on it as far as that goes. So,
yeah, just needed a cleaning of the lens.
Okay, well, we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that one.
Excellent.
When Robert joins us, he should be on in a few minutes. When Robert joins us, we'll ask him if there's any recommendations that he has dealing with his customers or whatever on solving some of these stupid little goofy issues.
Spit on and wipe it off.
Greg, that's a technical term, isn't it?
Yes.
What's that?
Crud.
Goofy little issues? Crud?
Yeah, crud. C-R-U-D.
I've been using this this wireless trackpad, and it took me a little bit to get used to it, but it's wonderful now. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back to a mouse unless I had to.
Wireless trackpad?
Everybody says it has one.
Hello, everybody.
Is anybody?
Hi, Bart.
Hi, Bruce.
Greg, how you doing?
Greg, did you get my email?
Is anybody noticing a breakup in the audio? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Is anybody noticing a problem with the audio kind of crackling or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also laggy.
And
It's
you're
not-
Well, that's to be expected. I can live with the lag. It's not understanding people that's a problem to me.
Yeah.
I think if everybody will press their mute button when they're not actually talking, basically use it as a press to talk button, and it might clean things up a bit.
And then try to remember to turn it off.
Greg, you look good in purple.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Okay, Greg, how are you?
All right.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, Greg, how come you're having a problem with this purple extraordinary image that you display on the screen and nobody else does?
On my session, Bob?
Yeah, when we look at you, your headphones are purple, your all your accents are purple, like your glasses, and you're very pixelated.
Yeah, I think I've got a problem with this FaceTime camera inside this laptop, and I meant to dig out. I've got an old iSight. I meant to dig out the iSight and slap it up on the top, and I just forgot all about it until you just mentioned
Well,
it.
you look okay from here.
Well,
Greg,
I do have a green background behind me just to cover all the garbage behind
Right,
me.
I understand. But I mean, your headphones look like they're red. Your
Yeah.
glasses look like they're kind of purplish around the edges, but you're
Well, I'm not making life too easy. I'm sitting here in my den, so I've got a big sliding glass door on one side and a fluorescent light on the opposite side.
well, I can see the sliding glass door in your glasses.
Really great color match up here, you know.
I can see the sliding glass door in your glasses.
Greg, your color has always been this way from our first meeting. In fact, when I went out to buy a headset that you have, I was looking for a purple one.
Yeah, you know what I can see? I see color fringing like around the band of the headset. And I think part of the problem is I'm using a third-party utility called eyeglasses, which allows me to adjust the color and the zoom and the sharpness and all that kind of baloney. Because if I run it without eyeglasses, man, it looks horrible. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If I turn the eyeglasses feature off.
But you're also very pixelated.
Let's see how bad it looks now, if it even shows up. There you go. There's an example of what it looks like.
Oh, you're dark.
You look
And I
good.
Picture is
You
dark.
like that, huh? Yeah, it looks good since I fixed everything, doesn't it?
It
So I
looks,
have no idea what's
if you had
causing that particular issue.
more lighting on it, that would have been a good picture, Greg.
Well,
Yeah.
that's probably true. I just, what I need to do is I just need to, because I can't, like right now, the Zoom just changed on me. I just need to spend some time and dink with it a little bit and see if I can't make it a little bit better. Oh, well. So did anybody listen to Apple's quarterly results they had the other day?
No. Did you?
No, the only thing I paid attention to is watching my stock go up in price, so that's good.
Same here.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, what it's going to do is it's probably going to, Marcia and I are looking, we're looking for a used one because the new one that we want, it's about 147 grand, but we're looking at a, what's called a Class B plus motorhome, which is basically it's a regular van with a wide body and a little higher, but it doesn't have an overhead. There's no overhead sleeping area over the driver's area, which makes it a Class C. So it's more like a shuttle, airport shuttle van. And the one we're looking at is about 7.5 feet wide and just right at 25 feet in length. So it'll park in a lot of regular places. It's on a Mercedes-Benz chassis, so instead of getting 9 or 10 or 11 miles to a gallon like I used to on my first motorhome, these that seem to average somewhere between 16 and 20 miles per gallon, depending on how heavy your foot is. And so it's a lot less. The one we're looking at is has an actual bedroom with twin beds in the back. That way, she won't beat me in the middle of the night when she rolls over, or the dogs will be stuck on her side. But you can turn it into a California King if you want to. It has a separate shower on one side and a restroom on the other side, and a small living and small galley up front. But looks real doable. And the company that makes them is the company that makes this particular one's located up in Canada, and they're on a back order. It seems like every time you order, if you order it brand new if you order it with all the crap you want on it, it's about an 8 to 10 month wait.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't want to take the depreciation hit that you do on new stuff. Hi, Larry, how you doing?
Hello.
And so what I'm looking at is trying to get a 2015 or later. The Mercedes chassis from 2015 came out with a smart steering wheel that's got like controls in the steering wheel for Bluetooth, for the radio, for the digital display on the dash, all kinds of things like that. And so I'd kind of like to have something that's relatively current. The actual house part of the motorhome doesn't really change much from one year to the next, typical, But the one we really want is located in Wichita, Kansas, from a private seller. Unfortunately, it looks like the sale is going to go through, but I've been bugging the guy every couple of days because it keeps saying sales pending. And I said, if this falls through, please call me right away. We're interested, because we can save about $40,000 if we buy one that's a couple of years old.
Sure.
And I can live with that. We'd fly to Wichita and then drive the damn thing back, whatever it happens to be. So,
yep.
But I mean, we're looking at like RV shows that are planned around the country through January, and everyone that I've looked at, the units that are going to be displayed at the RV show are already pre-sold. They've already sold all this stuff. So, hey, Diane, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Got it.
Everybody,
looking at you, the nice 27-inch iMac that I got.
Oh, very nice. Everybody, this is a good friend of mine through the Camera Club organizations for years. Diane Racy's been a big Mac user for years. So nice to have somebody from the Camera Club that up in LA to join us.
I thought I'd come check out and see what you're doing.
Yeah, there you go. And then we got Robert on there. I can see his smiling face. Well, he just disappeared. There he is. He's back.
Hi, Diane. This is Bart. Nice meeting you. I'm also a camera enthusiast. So I take it you do the Lightroom and Photoshop and all that too.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn the new stuff. I got Creative Cloud, the Lightroom and Photoshop. I was limping along with CS3.
Yeah, I've been subscribing to the cloud versions now for well over a year. I took a course on it that makes it a lot more understandable in terms of how you start off in Lightroom. If it requires that you go to Photoshop, then you always bring things back to Lightroom. There's a whole sequence, but this group isn't interested in that probably. So.
Sure we are. We're always listening. We're always looking for somebody else to talk besides my big mouth.
Today we're listening for your big mouth.
Well, at least between me and Robert, we'll probably get you screwed up pretty good. So we'll give it another 10 minutes or so for more bodies to get on board. What do we have right now? We got 14 people just joined us. So
okay, I'm gonna go make some coffee.
Sounds like a plan. I've got more coffee coming in just a moment myself. So So how you doing, Robert?
Good, good, good.
Did you move down to Orange County yet?
I did, in fact. I'm in Fullerton.
Oh, okay.
And finding it very nice, very nice. I found one of my clients that I'm spending a great deal of time at, using that as a central hub for my work, and it's working very, very well. I'm enjoying it.
Say, Robert, where in Fullerton are you? We might not be too far apart. I'm over in Buena Park.
Chapman and Placentia.
Okay, you know where the 91 and the oh, my mind went blank. The 5 and the 91 cross. We're right in that area down the block from Knott's Berry Farm, around there. So
yes,
we're not too far apart now.
Yes, I cross that intersection quite often in my travels, of course.
Yeah, maybe we ought to get together some morning for breakfast or something.
Well, I did bring my breakfast, so I'm going to sit and we'll have breakfast this morning.
I brought mine this morning too. I'm on a diet.
Yeah, today I've got today and Sunday. Those are my last fun days of pigging out, because on Monday I'm starting through Heritage. What's it called? It's called Health Maintenance Resource. I guess it's a nationwide, but it's through St. Jude's. And I go on a very restrictive, they call it no decision. That way I don't have to think, starting on Monday. And like I said, I've got a couple of friends of mine. One of them specifically, we went on a cruise with him and his wife and another couple back in October. And since that cruise ended, Herb, who is 6'4", has lost 93 pounds.
Wow.
And so I've got about 175 I'd like to get rid of. Not my wife. No, I still want her. But one of the reasons why we're looking at a smaller motorhome, the first thing my wife said is, she goes, well, you know, that shower would be awful snug for you. And I said, yeah, that'll be another incentive to lose weight.
That's right.
So that I can enjoy it a lot more, because I don't want to spend the next 20 years of my life staring at the damn television. I really don't. I want to get out and do a little traveling around here. And
there you go.
After coming back on the cruise, as much as I enjoyed the cruise and flying or whatever it is, hell, it cost us $1,400 to board the dogs for the 2 weeks we were gone.
Wow.
At least this way we'll be able to take the Chihuahuas with us, you know. So.
Where, Greg, two things. Where did you take the cruise? And secondly, does everybody know about Steve?
Yes.
What about Steve? Yeah. That's right. Steve. Okay, two things. I'll bring Steve up first. Yeah, Steve was Steve's wife. I'm going to get this wrong now. She does like training for corporations for improving oneself or whatever the hell it is. I'm not exactly 100% sure. I forget the name of the company of her business. But anyway, she had some business here a week or two ago in San Francisco for a couple of days, and then she was up in Seattle for 2 or 3 days. And they've got friends that live up in Seattle, so Steve flew up there and joined her. And I guess 2 or 3 days into the trip or whatever, he was having chest pains.
Ooh.
So they ended up taking him to the hospital because they thought he was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And but he's doing okay. He's back now. He came back last Tuesday, I think it was, and more restricted diet or whatever it is. But he seems to be doing okay. Now, unless you've heard something else different, Bruce or Bart.
Yeah,
I haven't talked to Steve for a couple of days.
I talked to him a few days ago. Actually, he had a 90% blockage. Now, he said it was coming out of the bottom of his heart. He didn't know what it was, but I presume if it's the bottom, it's probably a major vein, like the vena cava or something. I'm not sure.
Right.
There was 90% blockage. They put a stent in. He's back in town recovering. He was very happy with the hospital he went up to in Seattle. And the last I talked to him, he indicated that he might be going back if he needs anything further. So,
well, that's good. Glad to hear that.
So he's doing well, all things considered. He said it started off that he got the sweats. and then later on he got the pain, and so they drove him to the hospital. So
I missed it. Who are we speaking of?
Steve Spiegel.
Oh, is he out of town?
He's in town. No, he's back home.
Okay.
He's back home, but in recovering. And the last I heard, he was going to the doctor on Wednesday or Thursday, and at that time we'd see if he's going to be joining us on diets, which I presume he will.
Well, you know, it was real funny at the orientation class that I was at yesterday for this. Like I said, it officially starts Monday, so I've already picked up my food for the following week. But they're pretty strict. You in my case, I'll go every Monday at 4 p.m. and go to my class. Where everybody gets to shame you or praise you, whichever ends up being. and then I go see a nurse or a nurse practitioner afterwards, and then once a month I actually see a doctor. And because they want to, I'm on a ton of medicines right now, obviously, to try to keep me breathing, and that'll start changing real drastically. They've already made decisions on starting Monday. I cut back on a couple of things already to start off with, but the interesting part about the whole thing is the gal had said, how are you going to be, like I said, I'm going for what's called the no decision, so I didn't want to have to think about going to the store and buying stuff, because I thought, well, the temptation is just too great. If I'm in a store where there's something I shouldn't be eating, sure as hell I'll be grabbing that. So at least initially I'll go with everything's provided by them, even to the point they say if you're hungry, eat a fourth meal or a fifth meal. We'd rather have you eating our controlled food than you just snacking on garbage in between or whatever it is. So the last thing she said, she goes, enjoy yourself for the next 2 days, because come Monday you're ours. So she says, how are you gonna control yourself when you're at home? And I said, well, I've got a place in my den behind the wet bar that's an open area, and neither Marsha or I drink. Maybe I ate one drink a year, something like that. So there's a lot of space in that cabinet. I'm going to store the food there. That way I don't even have to go into the kitchen to be tempted by anything else that's there. Yes. And then, of course, immediately what happened was we've got a dinner retirement thing to attend Wednesday night. And I called up the people who are sponsoring it, and I said, look, I'm going to be on this restrictive diet. I feel bad about you paying for a meal. And she goes, well, we want you to be there. We're going to be paying on meals based on our head count. But she goes, you're not the first one that's gone through this. So if you're going to bring your own food, which I intend to do, she goes, if you bring your own food, tell your wife to order 2 meals and tell them you want the second one packaged because you're going to take it home so she can have it the next day. Well, that sounds like a plan. So she gets a bonus out of that deal as far as I'm concerned. So
who's got the bird?
There you go. That's
Who's
it.
got the bird?
I do.
Oh, it's pretty loud.
Are you kidding? Diane's got an aviary at her place. You got hundreds of birds there, don't you, Diane?
It's down from what it was, but yeah, I've probably got still close to 200 cockatiels.
Wow.
But the one that's making the racket is a little brown-headed parrot. It's a little African bird. I'm going to go give him some banana chips and see if I can shut him up. Sorry about that.
I wondered what that was.
Yeah, her and another good friend of ours who passed away a few years ago with the Camera Club were both real serious into breeding birds. In fact, we'd have a Camera Club meeting, and a lot of times Dale would show up with 3 or 4 little ones that he has to hand feed or whatever at every couple of hours or whatever. He's out there with an eyedropper or whatever, putting food in the little one's mouth or whatever, because the parents weren't doing a good job taking care of them. So, okay, well, we should go ahead and get cooking here. Marsha, they just said hello.
Hi, Marsha.
There's Bruce from our cancer guy. Yep.
Hi, Marsha.
Cancer guy, yeah. That's Janine, I think. Oh no, that's Diane. Diane Racy.
Oh, hi, Diane.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, Robert, you could probably do a better job of talking about the file system structure, but I've got Beta Preview 5 running on this Mac. I just upgraded it here a couple of days ago to the 5th beta. There'll probably only be one more version if another one comes out. But one of the big things is on the new on the Mac operating system is when you upgrade to, effectively it'll be 10.13, I guess, but they're kind of dropping the version numbers, and they're going to go with names because it's a little less confusing, I guess. So where the current Mac operating system is Sierra, this one will be High Sierra. Think of the same thing as Lion and versus Mountain Lion, or Leopard versus Snow Leopard. This is basically an enhancement over the existing Sierra, if I understand that right. But one of the primary things it's got going for it is Apple is changing the file structure, the way the files are stored and sorted on the computer. They've been using the hierarchical file system, gosh, for the last 18 years, 19 years, something like that, I think it was, Robert. And then they went to APFS Plus, I don't know, 11 or 12 years ago, something along that lines. And the new one's called Apple File System, how original, APFS. But its big claim to fame is that it's got built-in heavy-duty security, built-in some kind of form of built-in encryption, more so than what File Vault is, or different than File Vault. It has crash safe protection. I assume it's sort of like the saved state that works in the Windows world. And it's got a simplified data backup that works on the go. Anybody who's got an iPad or an iPhone who upgraded to iOS 11, the beta of iOS 11 here in the last couple of months, of course the new version will be out legitimately sometime in September, that was their first test case scenario on this new file structure, because its big claim to fame is it's more suited to solid state drives than what the existing HFS Plus is. Robert, have you got something you can talk about a little bit on that as soon as we get it out of your mouth?
Yeah, I am still eating, and I'm monitoring, and I'm coming up with comments, and I'm storing them out there. So you're doing fine.
Okay. So when you actually go to, excuse me a moment, when you actually go switch, it will probably be the last week of September, is the guess, to High Sierra. Of course, it'll be a free upgrade. You'll be able to, here's some of the features that they've got built in. You're not going to find a lot of whiz-bang features because it's going to be more under the hood kind of a thing. But Apple is getting into, in a serious way, it looks like, virtual reality, but more truly augmented reality, where you'd hold your iPhone or whatever up and you'd point it at a scene, and you might get, if you've got the augmented reality feature going, you might have little notes pop up as an overlay on the scene when you've asked for it that tell you what the buildings are. Or if you've identified people in your photos or whatever it is, as they're moving around on the screen in your camera, there might be an overlay layer that's pointing to who they are, or maybe a little bio of them or whatever. A feature that you'll be able to turn off and on. It requires a lot more horsepower from the phone or the iPad standpoint, but it also required a little bit different file structure. And so both iOS 11 for the iPad and the iPhone and High Sierra will have the underpinnings to be able to support this down the road. And I was watching Mac Break last week. I watch that every week with Leo Laporte and Renee Ritchie from iMore and from Pixel Core. Oh gosh, I can't think of his name right now. I'm having a blank. And Andy Anatko, and they were talking about some of the people that are making virtual reality, but more importantly, augmented reality capabilities right now. That this is going to go a long way to making that very practical for a lot of uses. So that's something we won't see right away, but at least it'll have the future structure built into it to be able to handle stuff like that. Now, as I was going through some of the online screens, and I'll show you a couple of websites that I picked here in a few minutes, there's a talk about better photo capability built into it. And right now, Photos hasn't been updated. That'll come out supposedly about the same time that High Sierra does. But here's some of the things that I wrote down. What they said was for the Photos application built into the Mac and iPhone we're talking mostly Mac, but it'll carry across the other two platforms as well. There's better organization. There's looped live photos, so for the first time you'll actually be able to see the live photos working relatively well with some control where they can play over and over and over automatically if you want to. And a new memories category. That feature seems to be working right now in the latest version of Photos. It'll also be easier to identify who's in your photo, so I guess the face recognition is going to be major improved with more accurate identification and cross-device syncing for albums, which really doesn't exist right now. So that'll be an improvement. But they say one of the coolest new features is a set of built-in editing tools. I've taken a couple of screenshots, and I'll show you a website that talks about that in a moment. There'll be a curves palette for fine-tuning color and contrast, a selective color dropper to hone in on a specific hue, and new filters that will make your photos fit for an art gallery. And for all your gallery and album-worthy photos, Apple now has partnered with third-party apps to give you more publishing and printing options. So inside of Photos right now, with this version, what they've released so far is when you go to the export or the share, there's more buttons, but the more buttons aren't turned on yet. Mm-hmm. So I guess there'll be a lot of other options that they've worked out deals with. So that sounds kind of cool. Then they've improved Safari. This looks like this is going to be really nice. It will now once again be the world's fastest desktop browser with about an 80% faster JavaScript performance when compared to Google's Chrome browser. It's going to eliminate one or more of the annoying features of the modern web, which is autoplay. You know, when you go to a website and there happens to be a small video over here and the video starts playing right off the bat, you'll be able to control that, whether you want that to happen or not, through the preferences on Safari. So that's great, because I hate them damn things automatically playing. I'm more than willing to go up and click that and start it whenever I want to start it. But the worst thing is you'll be here looking at something, and all of a sudden another one will start playing. You know, I hate that. That drives me nuts.
I wish they'd get rid of that thing where, you know, they have hotspots all over the place, and you're scrolling down the page and you don't see it, and you hit a hotspot and something starts to play. That looks good.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too. Maybe that's something we need to bug them about. So, where it says where Safari in the current operating system, Safari tells you which tab is playing audio. In High Sierra, it'll shut down the video. It'll shut the video down before it actually starts. The autoplay blocking will detect which sites are delivering unwanted videos and then press the pause button for you. Safari will also protect our privacy. A new system of intelligent tracking will use machine learning to identify prying advertising trackers, not that that exists, that track your online behavior and remove the cross-site tracking data that they leave behind. That means you won't get hit up with 36 vacuum ads the next time you buy one on Amazon. Safari 11 will also have the option to let you view sites in reader mode all the time. That's pretty slick. There's actually going to be a preference that if you go to sites that where first off, reader mode will be available all the time. I like that idea, because sometimes that's all you care about is you just want to read the damn thing. You don't want to necessarily screw around with looking at the images or whatever. You just want to read it. So you'll actually be able to go into this option in the preferences and pick sites that you go to all the time and tell it whether you want reader mode to be on by default or not on a per site basis. So that's kind of cool for any site that you visit on a regular basis. There'll be smoother video. It says where 4K where available, it's also upgrading to the new industry standard, which is called high efficiency video coding, or H.265 for short. The new system compresses video up to 40% more than the current H.264. Smaller video is always nice because disk space is always an issue, and mostly streaming compression will help that a lot. The current video standard, which is H.264, so the 265 will solve that problem or improve that problem. And then it says also under the new codec, videos will stream smoother and take up less space, both of which are necessary to make the experience a lot better. For anybody who's into gaming, I'm not a particular, my extent of games is usually helicopter or flying or something like, excuse me, is either solitaire or flying. A plane or something like that. After I've crashed a plane 3 or 4 times, I move on to something else. But there'll be Metal 2, the second version of Metal 2, which they claim will bring up to 10 times the access throughput call that the current Metal delivers, enabling graphics that are far more robust while adding external GPU support for hardcore gamers. And what did I see? They were talking about on Mac Break the other day, that I guess through the Macs with Thunderbolt capability, you'll be able to get, I guess you can right now, I guess you can get external GPUs to reduce the strain on your computer if that's what you want to do, and process this, offload this graphics onto this external device and bring it back. So that's kind of interesting from that standpoint. A few other features. In Notes, you can better organize your information by using a formatted table. That's totally new for Notes. And I think I showed it on iOS 11 how right now you can, on the new iPad, iPhone operating system, when it comes out, you'll be able to capture almost anything inside of a note. You'll be able to drag pictures off of Safari and put them right into Notes. That's kind of cool from that standpoint, and even have access to be able to edit them if you want to. And you'll be able to pin things specifically in Notes. Siri has a more natural voice that sounds more like a person rather than a machine. Spotlight will provide flight information and can share multiple Wikipedia results when there's more than one answer to your question. Well, that's kind of cool. There's a whole bunch of new emojis. I could care less about that, but who knows? I mean, why everybody gets so fascinated with that stuff, I have no idea.
Yeah.
In Mail, the search will now use Spotlight to quickly identify top hits, and you'll be able to split your inbox and your Compose window even when in full screen view. I'll show that in a moment. That actually works on this version right now. It took a little getting used to because I didn't read this before I tried it, but it's kind of nice if you're in your normal message viewer and you create a brand new mail, by default Mail shrinks to half the size, and the new message pops up. Your new window pops up here on the right, so that you can cut and paste stuff a lot easier from one mail message into the new mail message. That's a really nice touch. That's a big improvement as far as I'm concerned. It says you can split your inbox and your Compose window when you're in full screen view. Also, Mail has been optimized so that it uses less space on your storage device. And it says when you're in a FaceTime call, you'll be able to easily turn a special moment into a live photo as you can remember it forever. I don't know, after looking at some of you guys, I don't know if I'd want to remember it forever, but you never know. So it does say, here's the Macs that they say will be compatible with High Sierra. If you've got a MacBook 2010 and later, or if you've got a MacBook Pro 2010 and later, that's a pretty good range. If you've got a regular MacBook 2009 or later, a MacBook Air 2010 and later, a Mac Pro 2010 and later, a iMac late 2009 and later, or even a Mac Mini 2010 or later, you'll be able to run High Sierra. I'd say that probably covers about 95% of just about everybody.
Is that specifically 64-bit versus 32-bit, or is that something else?
That's it. No,
okay.
That's
if you are a 64-bit computer, you can run all the future operating systems.
That's right. And Apple says that as of January, they will be 100% 64-bit.
Right.
And come about the June or July timeframe of next year, non-64-bit may not be supported anymore.
Right.
So they may have something like they did before, where they had the I'm trying to remember what they called that, where they had the in-between for the older operating system compatibility kind of a thing. They may have something like that instead.
Well, what's nice is even if you have, a 64-bit operating system, you can still run 32-bit applications.
That's true.
Which is really nice because you don't have to get some kind of a hokey little thing to make it run,
Right. Well, they're telling all developers as of January The only way that they'll accept stuff to go into the App Store will be if it's 64-bit.
Okay.
So from that point on, everything has got to be 64-bit as far as
Right.
Apple's concerned.
Okay, now, Greg, this is very important for me because, as you know, I'm considering upgrading my Mac.
Right,
But
right.
this might allow me to put it off because it's such a huge investment for what I want in a Mac.
Bart, since I'm the only one that saw that email, why don't you tell everybody what you were looking to do? What you wanted?
Okay, what I was looking to do, I was under the impression I have a mid-2010 27-inch iMac. And what I was looking at, I was under the impression that this upgrade might be so extensive that it might not be supported anymore. So as a result, I was...
you mean a hardware upgrade? Is that what you're talking about?
Hardware, I'm talking
Okay.
about hardware. So what I was considering a 27-inch iMac with a an i7 processor upgrade, 1 terabyte SSD upgrade, 16 gigabytes of RAM, external multi-writer since they don't have the multi-writer built into the unit anymore. And we're talking about a $3,400 to $3,500 system when I got done. And so I want to make sure now, if I understand what you're saying correctly, I'm going to be able to hold off at least till next year in investing in the new stuff. And of course, the new iMac Pro will be out by then, and so I might be able to consider the lowest of the low ends of those at that time.
Yeah, it sounds like that's exactly what you're going to be able to do, Bart, because almost virtually looks to me like every machine from 2010 on is going to be able to run iSierra, and even some machines as early as 2009. So that's kind of cool from that standpoint. I'll be honest with you. My MacBook Pro that I've gotten, and my wife's, my MacBook Pro is 4 years old. Hers is, I think, 5. But Robert's the only person I know that's got one of the newer MacBooks that's got the touch bar. Do you like the touch bar feature, Robert? Yes or no?
I have yet to make any real effective use of it. It's one of those things that I'm so busy working, I haven't spent a lot of time noticing it nor taking advantage of it. I'm imagining that there are many that could take far greater advantage of it than I have bothered to. I use it in essence for mostly for quick and easy access to change the volume, but that's about it. And I'm not complaining that I spent money for it or that they developed it. I'm merely whining that I wish I wasn't so darn busy.
Right. I noticed that, especially during Mac Break on the weekly podcast, there's been a lot of people who have griped about the touch bar, saying, they got used to physically be able to feel the row of function keys across the top. They were able to feel those function keys across the top, and with the touch bar, since it's got basically a video display built into a one continuous control bar, and those buttons are dynamically formatted. So like if you're in a process where you're doing color optimization or something like that, Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever can dynamically change those buttons for customization. I think that idea is brilliant. I really do. But they said if you were used to reaching up there and feeling where those buttons are because you were that good of a touch typist, it kind of defeats the purpose because now you have to physically look and see where it's at. I almost wish that Apple had done one of two things, had either added another row. We don't need any more keys, let's put it that way. But it had a custom row, let's say above that, or even better, I think would have been if they had leave the touch bar the way it is on the current MacBook Pros and the other MacBooks that are offering that, and maybe put little raised bumps in between that represented where the existing keys would have been at, so that a touch typist could feel third bar over is where my function 3 button would have been at, and yet it would still display the whole thing. So I kind of wish there was some way that they could have done something like that. And who knows, maybe in a future machine they may come up with a way of addressing that. But other than that, when I look at the specs on any of the current MacBook Pros, if I was going to replacement, because I've usually replaced them at the 4 or 5 year, it'll be 5 years come January for me. I don't see enough of a jump in power or capability other than the latest greatest Type C connector, that kind of USB kind of thing. And that just means a whole bunch of crap that I've got that are externals. I'd have to come up with dongles and all this kind of baloney to plug it in. So I don't see a big improvement horsepower-wise to make it worthwhile for me to jump. I don't know, Robert, when you made your change, have you noticed a big improvement as far as that goes? You've had yours now about 4 months, haven't you? Something like that, 4 or 5 months?
Actually, I got it the end of last year.
Okay.
But I'm intrigued by the SSD because it's all SSD, and I've not been used to that. The problems are essentially very similar to previous, in that the number of that the usage of the processor and RAM and all that kind of stuff is very much the issue of overloading the system and causing slowdowns and bottlenecks and that kind of stuff. I have regularly typically been able to stay ahead of the curve as far as not having a full drive by just keeping up there with the size of the drives and all that. But in essence, I know I do appreciate the speed by using 100% SSD and not having and not compromising myself with the processor speed and such. And one comment, not too sure where to slide it in, but you were mentioning earlier that the next version of iOS was going to take advantage of the newer operating system. In fact, the existing iOS system has the newer operating system in it already.
You mean iOS 10?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Right. The new the phone operating system of today, the 10.3, is going to be equivalent to the 10.14 or on 10.12, 10.14 of the Mac. So we are not beta testing it, but we're really living it. And on that thread, that's one of the main advantages that Apple is seeking to accomplish by moving to the new file system, and that is having an identical file system on the Mac and iOS and the Watch, because previously we've not really had that. They've mimicked many of the features across the Mac, iMac, iPad, phone systems, but now as they go to the identical filing system, it's going to be even more efficient and easier for developers and such, having an identical file system beneath it all. So back to where you were at.
Robert, one thing you didn't mention about the SSD is the fact that it starts up really fast.
It does. It does.
It does. I don't know about you, Robert. It takes me about 20, 30 seconds, and I'm up and running from a cold start. Really amazing.
Yeah,
well, it does. And what's interesting, now that I did step us back into the file system, is that the file system, one of the major changes for the file system is that it has been designed to take advantage of the efficiency of SSDs and flash drives and all of that kind of stuff, because this is a new world that didn't exist before.
Right.
And previously, the system had been optimized for multiple drives with that handles large files, but those particular things aren't advantageous aren't necessary on iOS, but on the Mac side, moving to this newer file system, which it is 100% 64-bit oriented, if you will. It's going to allow for files of a far larger size and a very far smaller size as well. So that again is some of the differences that the AFS is going to be taking and throwing at us. In fact, the size of the files is, the number of files you're going to have. They've always really been able to step way ahead of the file system of Apple. It's always been able to stay way ahead of the game with regard to actual usage in the PC world, which I live all too often. Just as a comparison, they've always been behind the ball, behind the game, and we regularly have flash drives or hard drives that are not recognized by the operating system, have to be partitioned into multiple drives just to be able to be recognized by the operating system. But with Apple, the advantage is, in fact, that the size of the file system has always been far ahead of where we're at. And we don't suffer, we don't look at that problem or have that problem because of that. We're not aware of it. So I mean, on the new APFS, you're going to have up to 9 quintillion files on a single volume. That's more than most of us are going to get into.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I personally do at this time see some significant slowdowns with some of the situations that I have. And it's because the file system was not really designed for as many files as might exist in the current directory. When you're dealing with some types of systems situations that have multiple files, and you start, for instance, one of my clients is a pediatric cardiologist, and so they do electrocardiograms, and these consist of a picture of the heart or such, and multiple of them, what might be construed as a movie if you put them all together, such that they can look at one image and then move to the next image. When they're trying to measure as the heart is going in and out, they're trying to measure it at the largest state, at the smallest state, and that kind of thing. Well, and they actually want to see this movie. So they need a movie, but they need to be able to examine it in frame by frame, much as they do in movie making. But anyway, his point is, when you have a movie of a patient for every single visit, collectively, the size of the files in a directory and in the volume becomes absurdly large. And so that's the particular situation that I've seen. But all of that kind of stuff is typically very much going to go away with APFS. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful step for not me, perhaps, but my clients. And that's, we're all going to take advantage of it.
Let me tell you, real quick. Sorry about that. I've got a couple of customers that have got 4 or 5 year old Macs, and we're asking, and I said, you know what? Here's the best thing you can do. Rather than a spinning drive or a fusion drive, which is Apple's combination solid state and spinning drive, rather than taking apart your existing iMac or whatever it happens to be to upgrade it, what we've done in a couple of cases is we've gotten a 1 terabyte solid state drive, and I took a slab of Velcro and Velcroed it onto the back of the monitor so it would always be there, never have to worry about it. And then we moved their operating system to that solid state drive. So when they power it up, it takes a second or two longer, but it boots up off the solid state drive, and all their applications that they use that are heavy duty hungry applications like a Photoshop or a Lightroom or Affinity Photo or whatever it is that need a lot of processing, they've put those over there, and they're using the internal drive on their iMac or other external drives for storage, for bulk storage. And so they're saving the bulk of their files onto the spinning drives, because basically it's like a file cabinet. You open it up, you pull something out, you do whatever you're going to do, and then you shove it back in the cabinet. You're not constantly opening stuff up and moving stuff around on a table. And just the fact that they're booting up off of a solid state drive and running their heavy duty processor intensive applications off the solid state drive is a tremendous improvement in overall perceived speed on this older hardware. And I recommended that to Janine also, that she's got a solid state drive inside her iMac, but she's booting up to an external spinning drive because she was running out of space on the internal drive. I think it's what, a half terabyte, something like that you had, Janine?
Yeah.
Well, I got the same thing here on my MacBook Pro. I try to keep 100 to 200 gigs roughly free, but I don't store any of my photos. I take that back. That's the exception. I don't store my music or movies or anything like that over there. The applications are on it so that it's portable with me to go, and I carry one portable drive with me just in case if I go somewhere. But I've got the speed of running off of a solid state device rather than having a spinning drive to run not only the operating system but all the primary applications that I use. That's the biggest improvement, as far as I'm concerned, that anybody can make today, is to switch somewhere along the line in their loop of stuff, have a solid state drive as your primary boot drive. What's your feeling about that, Robert?
Well, how do you connect it though? The solid state drive.
USB 3 or Thunderbolt or whatever works for you.
Have you done it with Thunderbolt? It must be much faster.
Yeah, Thunderbolt is, but in my case, everything I've got is either USB 3 or I've got a couple of old FireWire drives, and so I've got a Thunderbolt. I've got one of the Belkin expansion bars on the back of mine, so I've got a Thunderbolt cable going into this, and then on the Belkin, you can have 2 more Thunderbolts coming out the back of that. It's got 3 USB 3 slots on it. It's got a FireWire 800 slot. It's got an Ethernet slot, and then it's got two. I don't know why. It's got 2 or 3. It's got a couple of USB. I take that back. I think it's got 5 USB 3 slots on it. And then I've got a 7-port USB hub sitting on top of that because I've got a whole bunch of these little cheap drives that I picked up for putting movies and stuff like that on. So the cool thing is, if I go to take this laptop with me, it's got 2 USB 3 slots in this laptop.
Right.
And all I got to do is unplug the Thunderbolt, unplug the power, and I'm gone. Everything goes with me. I don't have my movies, but most of them are off of iTunes, so I can get them on the fly if I want them anyway. Right. Or if I'm going to go camping, I just take the little hard drives with me or whatever. I mentioned this last month. What I did is I had run across, through one of the websites that I was looking at, I ran across, they're made by SanDisk. It's a flash drive, honest to God, it's about 3/4 of an inch in length. It sticks out about 1/4 of an inch once it's plugged in.
Right.
And I wish I'd have bought more of them. It were 128 gig flash drive, and they were on sale for, I think, $16, something like that.
That's amazing.
So I bought 2 of them, and now they don't have them anymore, unfortunately. And so what I ended up doing with one of them is I had partitioned my 500 gig solid state internal drive with a second partition with Mavericks on it, because I'm still using iWeb, and Mavericks doesn't work. iWeb doesn't work good with any operating system past iWeb. It works, but it works flaky.
Okay.
So with Mavericks, and I've got a couple of websites that I'm still sort of half-ass maintaining, although I'm in the process of changing the club's website over, but to reflect all of our other changes. So I was eating up 50, 60 gigs worth of space on my 500 gig solid state drive that I would use for like an hour a month. And I thought, well, there's got to be, so I didn't want to go back to a spinning drive.
Right.
So I've now got one of these little drives plugged in, and I've got it partitioned to 50 gig and 70 gig so that I can get the rest. And I can hold down the option key when I boot up to that flash drive, and I'm running Mavericks now for iWeb, do whatever I got to do.
Absolutely.
Works like a champ. And the good thing is they're so small that I can leave them plugged in all the time, shove the whole laptop in the case, pull it back out, in the carry case, pull it back out, and they're not getting a chance of getting ripped off or whatever.
Sure.
Then on the second one, so the rest of that particular drive is just used for extra storage. I want to get off the hard drive. I just shove, it's called extras. How brilliant is that? And then the other one, I'm such a fanatic on keeping my photos, because I've made some goofs in the past of not having them backed up. So they're now not only being backed up by Time Machine and being backed up by Carbonite, but I have Carbon Copy Pro every night at 1 a.m. backing up my pictures directory onto that other 128 gig drive. So I've always got another backup of that just with me all the time.
Sure.
And I just leave them plugged in all the time. The only time I ever have to remove them is if I've got the laptop with me traveling and I've got to plug another drive in. No big deal. They're not being used all the time.
Right.
So like I said, I wish I'd have bought more of these at the time at $16
I guess
a
so.
piece, because now I've seen the 64 gigs. I've seen those as low as $16, but they don't seem to be offering the 128 gig ones anymore. So, so that to me works real good. And as goofy as it sounds, booting up to that USB 128 gig is it's not as fast as a regular SSD, because I think the USB 3-channel bus isn't as fast.
Right.
But it's damn close. It runs real close to it. but nothing beats a solid state drive as far as I'm concerned. That's the only way to go for at least booting purposes.
Greg?
And the other thing you can do if you have the money is put a 1 terabyte SSD drive inside your MacBook Pro.
I thought about that, John,
And
but
it's
at this point,
about $600 though.
Yeah, I thought about that. I mean, the only reason at the time I bought this, they had three choices: 256, 512, or 768. And the price difference between 512 and 768 was like $400. It was ridiculous at the time. So I went with the 512 because I figured, well, that was the best compromise that I could come up with. And this is an i7 processor. It was supposed to be an i5, and Apple's weird in the refurb deal. If you order something refurb, so I ordered an i5 with 16 gigs of RAM, the most I could get, and the 512, and they didn't have it available at the time I ordered it. They accepted the order, but they didn't have the time of fulfillment. So they gave me an i7 in its place.
Cool. That's
so
good.
Never complain about getting more for the same price.
That's right.
I got the best that was possibly available, with the exception of the hard drive speed.
Right.
And so these little drives now you can now get a 2 terabyte spinning drive for about $60 at Costco, which is unbelievably cheap, and I think you can get solid states for about $200, something like that.
Yeah.
So, I would recommend that to anybody. If you've got an iMac at home that you're looking to get more speed, hopefully it's a USB 3, and you can go into system, go about this Mac and go look at the devices and see.
Right.
USB 2 is going to be an improvement, but USB 3 is a major improvement. It's 12 megabaud or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
And take a slab of Velcro and Velcro that thing onto the back and make that your new boot drive from that point on, and you'll notice a tremendous improvement.
Yeah.
It is interesting, as you spoke of a terabyte SSD. And in fact, I looked, and I'm running a terabyte SSD. And while we consider them expensive, what we really should recognize is to amortize them over the amount of time that we spend on our computer and the length of the life cycle that computer can then entail. Right now, I basically have a 3/4 full. So, and because I don't bother managing getting rid of stuff or worrying about what I store. I don't store a lot of video. I don't store a lot of audio. I don't store a lot of, the typical files types that we think of as being large, but there's just an accumulation of stuff. And so it is very, very, it's like living in a house that's big enough, that has enough storage. Concentrate on the work you have to do instead of the time it takes to worry about managing space. In the same way that we all accept that we benefit from not having to worry about viruses and worrying about antivirus software and all that kind of stuff, we can and we should recognize and try to pencil out the benefits of larger drive spaces, because it makes sense there. And again, back to the new Apple filing system, we're talking about transfer types, USB or protocols, USB, Thunderbolt 3, etc. The APFS is distinctly going to be geared towards faster file copying and that sort of thing, and while also safer. But the faster file copying, I mean, right now, things can take time. If you have to move a large amount of files for archiving purposes or whatever, it takes time. But that's going to be far, far, far faster. So, but only it will be best if you have the transfer protocols of things like Thunderbolt to really take advantage of it. And confusing as it is, unfortunately, that we have multiple different types of Thunderbolt. So keeping up with the latest and greatest version of it, or actually making use of the later versions is going to make sense. So if you're looking to purchase a hard drive, recognize that purchasing ones with the faster transfer protocols is future-proofing that device. So if you're looking for just flash drive to stick in your pocket, yeah, you may not want to go out and get the 128 gig flash drive, but if you're just looking for short-term use. But if you're looking for a hard drive to put in a new machine that you have to tear apart, an iMac or whatever else, look at the larger sizes. They probably will make sense.
Hey, Greg.
Robert,
Yeah.
I got a couple questions for you. On a machine such as I have, would it make sense for, basically figure a year before I replace it? Would it make sense to invest in putting a 1 terabyte internal SSD and recognizing the fact that this I know on the USB it's USB 2, not USB 3.
Well, you've given all types of tips and hints as to why I would say no. If you're not dealing in a USB 3 environment, you're really not using today's technology. So you're going to have a chain as strong as the weakest link, and you're going to have transfer speeds. The machine you were talking about has to be 2010 or thereabouts, correct?
Mid 2010, and by the way, I don't know which version of Thunderbolt it has, but it has whatever was there.
Right. If you're thinking about changing to a new machine in a year, which would not be surprising, I wouldn't bother putting out the money for a SSD unless you were thinking you were going to rip it out and put it in an external case, which you're not likely to do. You have a machine that's 7 years old. I'm not of the type to think that it takes a lot, that investing in that makes a lot of sense. The rammer is slower, the bus is slower, the protocols such as USB 2 there. You have in essence what could be near considered a car or a 1960 and 1970 car, and so you don't go in and put in a great engine if you're going to buy a new one next year.
Yeah, that's why I'm still not sure whether I want to do it. I want to make the decision soon because we're going to Delaware next week, and you don't pay sales tax there. So the thought was I could save, on what I'm looking at, I could save $300 in sales tax buying there, but I could put it off a year too because we go a couple times a year back.
You're already stretching the term, the life usefulness of your computer. So. I wouldn't bother enhancing it. Interesting, different situation here. Many of you have probably seen my Mini. It's 2006, over 11 years old right now. 225,000 miles on it. And I had, driving down the freeway, I've more than once come across a retread. Driving over that retread sucks up my front spoiler, rips it out. It looks like crap in many ways. The other day, and the seats are tearing because they're leather. You put that many miles on the car that the seats are going to have been used, etc. And but I love it. It really runs well, and it's really served me well. It just doesn't look all that hot. It looks like a piece of crap, actually. And so, anyways, the other day I bought a nice set of seat covers, and they look really fine. And they look in there, and they just look so darn good. I just said, "Damn it, I do love this car." So I went and it's in for the body shop, and I'm fixing this and fixing that and spending more than most people would. But the fact is, this car runs well. The technology that I'm waiting for my next car, for my more autonomous car, if you will, is actually 2 to 3 years out, when the prices come down a little bit and the maturity level of autonomous has actually grown far more than where we're at today. And so for 2 or 3 years, the amount of dollars I'm going to put in, I have a reliable car that is got great speed, low maintenance, all that kind of stuff. Just because it has 225, I'm probably expecting this thing to hit over 3, maybe 400,000 miles if I want to. Given that, it can do that. The computer, on the other hand, has a slower processor, slower memory, slower bus, slower interchanges. So all over, it's a compromised vehicle to begin with, the computer. My car isn't a compromised vehicle. It is a well-run, very effective. Every part on it works. The mechanical parts are all great. I can put the money there. So, you have to look at each situation. If you're willing to put off, if you're interested in putting off your purchase of your iMac for another year, I'm imagining you're used to what it is. And when you get this new computer with this new SSD and all this other kind of stuff, you go, oh my God, this is so cool. And that'll last for about a month. And then it'll be just like, you'll get used to it and it'll be your regular computer and it won't be anything special. But as long as you're willing to put that off, keep the SSD along with it. Keep the components in line.
I'm in that same boat, Robert. I mean, our Saturn LS, is a 2000. It's got 120 some odd thousand miles on it. It's towable behind a motorhome. One of the reasons why I bought it with 4 wheels down. My Honda Element's a 2003. It's got 167,000 miles on it. It's towable behind a motorhome. Same transmission as the Saturn. So it's an automatic that it can be towed behind a motorhome with 4 wheels down without having to do anything special to it. And then we've got about a 4-year-old Camry that's only got about 30,000 miles that was given to us by my parents. But when my mom decided she wanted a different color car, that was their logic behind it. So they dole one out to the family members as it rolls around. And so I've been telling everybody lately that the latest vehicle I'm looking at is a Mercedes-Benz. It'll be attached to a motorhome, but at least it will still be a Mercedes-Benz parked in the driveway if I can get away with it. So I'm in the same boat. The only way I would get a new car right now is it would probably either be a hybrid or all electric. But now that I hardly drive at all anymore, the all-electric makes a lot more sense. But they don't impress me a whole bunch right now, and I really don't have a need for it. When both the Honda and the Saturn crap out, that'll be the time to think about it.
Well, Greg,
it's just transportation.
One thing that I've been talking to Bart about is by changing hard drives in these iMacs, one thing that got to be careful of is Apple, in their infinite wisdom, created their own hard drives. And doing that, what happens is if you take and replace a hard drive, fire it up, and you'll get a little ways, and then all of a sudden the fans will go crazy because they're not made to work in the iMac. It was a special custom order. So it's a deal of trying to find out where they brought that in. And I've got a couple of them in right now that they have that problem. It's a pain in the neck.
Well, Steve, I did something like that on my old PowerBook. The PowerBook I had, now it would be like 9 years old or 10 years old, something like that, had like a 256 gig drive, and I ended up putting a 500 gig drive in it. And at the time, I thought this was smart. At the time, I thought, well, you know what? I opened it up myself and changed it out. I put in a 512 gig hard drive, but I put in the 7,800 RPM rather than the 5,400 or the 40 or the 4,200 or whatever it was that laptops typically have, thinking, the speed will make. Yes, the speed was faster. The access speed was faster. Let me put it that way. I didn't need it because the bus speed was still the restrictive feature in it. But the big drawback to putting that bigger drive in, that faster drive, which I paid extra money for, is the fans went nuts. The fans ran hot all the time, so much so that I put a cooling pad underneath the laptop to get the temperature back down to something that was more realistic, because I thought the faster drive would make more sense. All it did was just raise the temperature internally up.
Yeah,
but
Apple,
what I'm talking,
Apple had a reason for doing that.
Sure, they did.
And
but what I'm saying, what would make more sense for anybody right today is I wouldn't gut an iMac and take it apart, not unless it's physically failing. I would buy a third-party solid state drive, whatever you could afford, and like I said, put a slab of Velcro on it if it's small enough, like if it's a pocket drive, and Velcro it onto the back so you never have to worry about knocking it off on the floor or whatever it is. Plug it into a USB, hopefully USB 3. I don't think I'd do it if it was USB 2. And then I would reload my operating system and all my primary apps onto that drive. I'd leave about 100 to 200 gigs available, because applications like Photoshop, Final Cut Pro, that kind of thing, will build the scratch files on your boot drive. Now, some of them are gotten smart enough that you can say, hey, I don't want to use this for my scratch files. I want to, Photoshop will let you do that. Final Cut Pro will let you do that. More and more apps are doing that, so that you can build the scratch files on a faster device if you want to. So that's one of the reasons why I always leave 100 to 200 gigs available on this internal SSD, is to have that flexibility if I need it there, not have to rely on a spinning drive to be able to work with. But you'll find a tremendous change in speed, and that drive, you can take it with you anywhere you go because it's external.
That's the best idea, because one other thing, you know, in all these ideas we've come up with, I've, like, say, my late 2008 MacBook Pro, which I'm using right now, excuse me, I bought a 1 terabyte spinning drive years ago and split it into 2 partitions of 500. But then I said, I want to try the solid state drive. So I ordered, or I bought a 240 at Micro Center, and I bought an adapter kit where you take out your optical drive and put that in. And that has worked great because I boot off of that. But the thing is, one thing you guys got to remember is, on any of these new computers, when they say solid state, it is not a solid state drive like that. You know, it's a little thin board, or they're now incorporating it into the logic board, and it cuts costs of a connector and gold fingers on the board and stuff like that, which is all, you multiply that time millions.
And it also increases the reliability too.
Right. Yes, Bruce.
You're talking about the Fusion drive?
No, I'm talking about the solid state, totally solid state drives.
You're talking about the raw drive itself, though, not one in an enclosure, right?
No, mine,
external.
Mine, the one I'm using is not in an enclosure. It's basically
a raw drive.
A drive that is a 2.5 inch.
Right, and then you've got it fitting. Yours is fitting in that CD adapter thingy that
Right.
Other World Computing or other people sell.
Right, and I did that because now we're supposedly not using much of our optical drives. The only trouble is, when I go to a client's and I need something that's on a CD or DVD, I started one day to insert one, and I said, "What's going on?" Oh yes, I forgot. Put that out. So,
of course, luckily, they're only about $30 to buy nowadays. So a DVD drive. So
I got a question about capacity.
External.
Excuse me. I've got a question about capacity. I read an article and I'm very confused. And this article said, and if I understood it correctly, that if I had a 1 terabyte hard drive compared to a 1 terabyte Fusion drive, that in actuality, after, you know, with what it takes up in memory to run the drives and so forth, that I'd actually have less usable capacity left over on the solid state drive than I would on the hard drive. Is that true, or am I misinterpreting what I'm reading?
I haven't run into that problem. I've been using a Fusion drive for a year and a half now on a new 27-inch iMac, and I've had no problems whatsoever in capacity.
Yeah, but you have a Fusion drive. I'm talking about where if you take like a 1 terabyte solid state compared to a 1 terabyte hard drive, not a Fusion.
A spinning drive.
Yeah, so in other words, there's some housekeeping software that's in every drive, correct?
Yes.
That it uses. And my impression of what they were saying was that there's more space taken with the housekeeping functions on a solid state. True or false?
No, there's nothing. There's no significant difference there at all. What you're talking about is because the file format is the same. It's a matter of the medium is different. And the file system and format are what create the space usage.
Mhm.
So it really doesn't change the fact of what kind of medium it's on.
Yeah,
Now,
but you know what? You know what? Something I heard about. If you're going to use an SSD drive and you're going to be deleting files a lot, you're going to lose space.
Okay, where that's going is in the beginnings, SSDs had far shorter lives than they did.
For read-write purposes, correct?
Correct, right. The individual sectors and bytes that and the blocks would burn out, if you will, after being written, unwritten, written, erased, written, erased, written, erased. They had a far shorter life, and as such, when a block would become unreliable, it would be written out as "do not use this block," and so
Right.
the drive would continually get smaller and smaller.
Right.
But the life of SSDs has increased tremendously
Okay.
over the last 5 years, and such that it's really not the issue that it once was. So the drive doesn't get, it's certainly not going to get smaller, anything that you might notice.
now getting to this new getting to this new file system. On my computer, and I'm sure everybody else's, we all have everything that is in folders under the old file system. What does, if I'm gathering things right, we're going to have to do some transitioning with our files, change files around or
Not
something?
at all, Bart. That's what's amazing is Apple, like they did on the iPad and the iPhone with iOS 10,
Mhm.
it's invisible. It takes a little longer to load it the very first time. But remember, I'm running a beta, and I've upgraded it 3 times now. I'm running a beta on this. Laptop right now, the Beta 5 version of High Sierra. And what it does is, my guess is Apple is dynamically changing the format structure on a track per track basis while it's loading the operating system. It's my understanding how that works. It's invisible. It's totally invisible. Now, did I make a master backup prior to that? You bet, just in case, because I've made that mistake in the past. Did I have to use it at all? No. I will tell you that this is the first time I've ever put a beta on and experienced some issues. It's still in beta 5. I'm still having this problem, and since I just put it on the other day, I've got to let Apple know that if I had a hot corner set up to where if I wanted to turn the screen off, I'm watching TV late at night, and I don't want the screen blaring in my face because I got to sit in here in the den on a folding tray table, is I could move to a lower left-hand corner. I had that set up as a hot corner to put the display to sleep. As soon as I put the display to sleep, it logs me out. So that's a drawback right now. That's one issue. The Beta 4 preview I had, I'd be doing something, and all of a sudden I noticed the contrast would change on the desktop. And I think it was having a problem with the gamma color settings. And the only way I could get it back was to either log out and log back in. Well, then I caught on that I could go into System Preferences, Display, Color, click on one of the other odd colors, and then go back to the color LCD, and it went back to normal. That doesn't seem to be happening on the Beta 5 preview. That was another thing that I wrote Apple about. So I don't recommend anybody at this point in time using High Sierra unless you just want to experiment with it, if you're willing to put up with the hassles of having to go back. It's stable. I haven't had a problem with that. But these little quirks about the display going out, and so what did I do? I just turned off the hot corner. That solved that problem. And turned off put the computer to sleep or whatever. I turned that feature off. I just blanked the screen out if that's the case.
So when are you going to show us the beta?
I can. I can do that anytime you're ready. If there's not much to see though, that's the problem.
Okay.
There's hardly anything.
Hey, boy.
But if you're willing, if you guys want to take a couple of minutes, I'll go ahead and show you the few things that I've run across so far.
What do you
Yeah.
do?
One clarification, something you said.
Oh, how'd you do? Old guy like you still play golf?
Hello. Where'd you go, Greg?
Oh,
I'm here.
hey, hold on just a second.
I think Tom
Switch
needs
into the computer.
to mute his microphone.
I did. Sorry about that.
That's all right, Tom.
No,
All right.
the other Tom.
Can you hear me, Greg? Greg?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
Hold on.
In the article I read, this about 32 versus 64-bit with High Sierra. The article I read said very clearly that.
Oh, okay. Kurt, you there? Oh,
What?
what's up? What have you been up to?
I just turned Tom's audio off right now. He's mute. I muted him.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bob.
No,
You're not Bob.
the article I read very clearly stated that High Sierra, during its life, would support 32-bit and 64-bit file system, but that after Sierra, when we go to the next operating system, whether it's Death Valley or whatever you want to call it, will no longer support 32-bit.
That's true. They're saying that probably by June of next year. That's the expected date where they'll stop doing that.
Yeah, but that means it would be happening. You're saying that it would be happening during an update of some sort to the existing High Sierra at the time, rather than waiting until the next operating system after that comes out.
I think that's just a date, Bob. I think for all practical purposes, even though they're saying June, they really mean September or October of next year. Whatever the replacement for High Sierra will be.
Because you got a lot of applications out there that commercial and app store as well that are still 32-bit being promoted, and every developer is going to be as fast as perhaps Apple will be, upgrading their application to 64-bit.
Well, supposedly, if it continues on, you're going to be able to run 32-bit applications forever on 64-bit machines. I don't know if that's going to change with the Apple file system, but I don't think so.
It's interesting. A couple of items that we really didn't. Let's see. You're viewing. I have full screen.
He's got the computer on right now.
Yeah, I'm sharing my desktop right now.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just looking at. Full screen. There we go. There's that. Okay. Anyways, in general, a couple of the things to go back and touch in general, what it's all about is that the new OS is the new file system. It's going to be optimized for several different things. One of them is cloning. Right now, we really recognize we want to clone a drive as one method of backing it up is to clone, to be able to put it on the shelf. It's going to be optimized for cloning. It's going to happen much faster. It's going to have copy on write. Copy on write is going to increase the reliability because as you are writing it, it's going to actually be copying it, putting in another location at the same time, in fact. It's going to be optimized for snapshots such that you can revert back to where you were previously at a previous point in time most easily, such that if you do something and things are screwed up, that you can get back to that same place easily and quickly. It's kind of like a time machine reverting back of sorts. Encryption is going to be natively supported. It's designed for encryption is part of the file system. It's not an add-on. Defragmentation is going to be far more of an issue designed in there such that the defragmentation will be less of an issue than you might ever have noticed. Right now, you've been purchasing programs to like Cocktail or whatever. Maybe you've gone in there to defragment, but that kind of thing is going to go away. As Greg and others have noted here, the volume is going to be converted from the existing file system to the new version in the process of the installation of that new operating system. It's just going to happen. If you have other volumes that are outside of your main operating system, you're going to have to manually convert. So that'll be by choice, if you will. The forward migration is going to be covering the Fusion drives that we have, the HFS drives we have, and other types of core storage, as well as file vault. That'll be taken care of as well. But the new file system is APFS. In disk utility, you would be able to select an old volume, and one of the menu options will be to convert to APFS. You could also revert a drive that is already there. You might have seen, or you typically might be used to seeing in your iOS devices, and in fact in the new disk utility, you've seen a bar at the bottom that shows you have this many music files, and this many documents, and this many movie files, all that kind of stuff. All that kind of stuff is going to be natively there, so it'll be accurate, more definitive, tell you more detail about each of the different types of file types that you have there. There's going to be things called space sharing, which is going to be a new type of thing that we didn't previously have, and that is drives over files can be written over multiple drives by sharing a space and considering it to be one file, which can be which isn't being done because the drive can't handle it, but for efficiency of reads and writes, kind of like a RAID kind of system. So that kind of thing is going to be happening there.
Could I use that in conjunction with my Drobo, so that instead of having to separately copy stuff over to the Drobo, it would send it to it at the same time?
That you would be you wouldn't take it. All of this would be an automatic in the background happening, but you could use a Drobo kind of thing, something to allow it to happen. You would still have to manually do it, but it would happen far quicker and would be less obvious that it's happening because it would be happening in the background, and it would not affect your speed and interaction with the drive quite the same. So the answer would be yes, but you might not notice it actually happening. Let's see. There's a couple other things I was thinking of. Right now the drives are use Unicode 3.2. HFS does, and under the new APFS, it's going to use Unicode 9. Going from Unicode 3 to 9, obviously, is far more advantageous, which will make it such that it's easier and more natively able to, and more efficiently able to store and make use of the additional Unicodes. Many people don't get involved a lot with Unicode. I personally I do some work with Cyrillic languages and those kinds of languages, to Czech and stuff that have more characters than what we're used to. But other people will be using Unicode perhaps without unknowingly when you're looking at your emojis and that kind of stuff, which is expanding the number of character sets tremendously. Right now, by the way, it is HFS is normalizing the case sensitivity insensitive, normalizing it by default. But with APFS, the normalization will be insensitive by default, as opposed to the normalization will be insensitive by default, whereas that's the opposite of where we're at now. There was a couple of other things I was trying to think of. Those are the primary things. Fusion drives are going to be supported. Obviously, it's to be more secure since the encryption is built in. It will be converting all of the file vault files that you have into the new format, which will make them more secure. Many people were insecure or wary of the file vault capabilities, but that largely is going to go away. It will still be, if it is encrypted, if you have chosen to encrypt something, you'd best remember your password because they will not be recoverable. Yeah.
You know if they've changed the name from File Vault 2 to File Vault 3 or anything?
No. I think that I think that whole aspect is going away because they're converting the existing File Vault, and I don't think it's getting a new name.
Because
Greg?
it's going to be more baked in than it was before.
Correct. Exactly. It won't be a do you want to use File Vault. It will be File Vault as a norm, if you will.
It'll just be there all the time, whether you like it or not, period.
Exactly.
But you should like it, of course.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is. We've been beta, like we've said, iOS has been beta testing it, if you will, if you want to call it that, for quite a while. But Apple is pretty good about not releasing things until they're ready. So let's see. What other things were there? Was a couple other things I was thinking of. Snapshots are going to be very handy. The snapshots will occupy space. They will happen very quickly. And snapshots will basically be only available to admins. If you may or may not have recognized, all of the Carbon APIs will be gone. One of the programs that I've been using since forever was largely based on Carbon APIs, and that program absolutely will not run in the next version of the operating system. Fortunately, that developer has started with a complete 100% Cocoa app. Started about 3-4 years ago, and is in beta testing or in final development stages right now, because it, along with any other program, just won't run. If any of the Carbon APIs will be gone. So that's it. That's most of the stuff that is non-crazy making technical, but so back to you guys.
I have another question. I don't know why I'm not popping up on the screen, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. Last month I was asking what happens when you get on the internet and you log in. You automatically get this drop down that says, do you want to save that password? And I want to stop that. Now, has anybody else got a problem with that?
Well, that's. Are you using the Safari browser, John?
Yes.
Right. What is this a single application you're getting this?
No, it's in the Safari browser.
Oh,
so
okay.
If he goes to a website and puts in a password, it wants to know if he wants to put it into Keychain, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Right. How do I stop that?
Yes, you are correct, and that is a feature, if you will, but it is something that you can turn off. And I'm going to go over here and see if I can take a look and find it easily for you.
Okay.
I think it's in the Safari preferences.
Yes, it is.
Correct.
Well, I looked in the Safari preferences. I didn't see anything at the time after last meeting, and I just thought, well, I
try asking on Google.
Something happened.
Yeah, I don't save anything online in Keychain as far as that goes, and I've never had that problem pop up.
It doesn't prompt you. It doesn't prompt you, Frank, when you.
No, I've never had that prompt because I go in as soon as I set up Safari, I turn all that crap off.
Right. Well, I use 1Password, and so I let 1Password control that. So.
Same here.
Let me find out where it's at.
No problem.
I think it has to do with autofill. I turn everything off in autofill.
You know what? I think you're right. I think
yes, it is autofill. You're correct. Yes.
Autofill.
Usernames and passwords. That's where you edit it at.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I just turn everything off in autofill. I don't use it. And
okay, this is in Safari, or this is in what?
Safari preferences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Safari preferences. Go to autofill. I just turn it all off, and I never have any of that problem.
Okay. It just drives me buggy.
Yeah.
It really does.
John,
you're
curious.
you're buggy enough as it is, so you know.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm always intrigued by this, John. Tell me what it is that how that works, doesn't work for you.
Well, because I have a password file, it's on a text article. I keep my passwords there because once in a while I have to change them and I go through all that other stuff with it. But every time I go to log into a thing, I type in a username and then I type in the password and then I get a drop down saying, "Do you want to say the password?" No, I don't want to say the password. I don't want you to bug me about it.
Okay, so I mean, I can see that in a shared environment where your computer is being used by other people.
No, that's just me.
Log in and log out.
That's just me.
But if it's okay, but if it's you and only you, I'm intrigued that you're not interested in working easier or smarter, if as some people might say.
Well, I think the way I want to work is the way I want to work.
I'm fully with you there.
I just don't want to have it interrupted and have to click something else to get to where I'm going.
I happen to be one that leaves it on, and I selectively choose whether or not I want it to be retaining a particular password or not. It's on a case-by-case basis, but collectively, I think I would be working a lot harder if I didn't choose to do that. So,
okay.
But everybody, I love hearing people's positions and needs to accommodate. So it's all good.
And you can go in and it gives you an edit to where you can tell what sites you want it to remember.
No, I don't want to have to go by site. I just don't want it to go off at all.
It just has an edit feature, John. That's all I was meant.
Okay, all right.
You have to click on the Piss John Foley feature. You have to uncheck that feature.
Yeah, there's certain, you have the ability to say, "Don't ask me again on this site," or to save it on this site, or just to ignore it and I'll decide later. So the options are there, but if you want never, there's the option. Uncheck that box and you're good to go.
Actually,
which is what, autofill?
I really
autofill. Okay.
I've been getting that pop up sometimes, and I've always said, "Geez, how do I stop this from coming up?" Because I use 1Password, and
right.
So now we found out the answer, Frank. Thank you.
You're welcome. Not a problem.
I'm not as quirky as John is. I don't want it.
Well, some people need a little bit of reminding assistance.
Everybody
couldn't live without a little bit of a reminder.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of clients that I have that call me up or text me and email me saying, "What's my password?"
Hey, I've got that, guys, over at Leisure World. The people forget they got little papers, and they'll come to the lab there, and they don't know which paper it's on or what page of a little notebook it's on and stuff. And
I just keep it in a little text file. That's all I do. And when I have to change it, I go in there and change it because I know that's the last time it was changed.
The beauty of it all is we can make it work whatever way you want it to work.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, John.
You guys make this password thing too difficult. You ought to use my system for passwords. You keep it simple, okay? But
what is it?
No one is going to figure out 2, 3, 4, 5. Because everybody is going to try and figure it out.
Most places that you have to fill a password in want you to have at least a capital letter.
A capital letter and a number and a weird symbol.
So it's capital 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, John, so here you go. You're going to go into Safari. You're going to go into Preferences. You're going to go into Autofill. You're going to click on Usernames and Passwords. You can click on Edit, or you can uncheck that, and that just solves it right there.
Okay.
But you can click on Edit, put in your user password for your computer.
Well, what is that?
He's just showing.
That's if you want.
And then here's again where you can uncheck this, or you can go through here and selectively pick like Frank was talking about. But if you just uncheck this,
I just want to uncheck
category,
it. I just want to uncheck
it right there. That solves it right there.
Okay. Thanks. I looked for this stuff after our last meeting, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I have a question.
That'll be $75, John.
The lady has a question.
Lady has a question.
I'd like to know more about how to find out about the this new Apple filing system in terms of the sectors and the clusters and things. What are they doing? How are they doing? How are they setting it up? And how does it look differently on a hard drive or an SSD? What do they do differently to facilitate all of these changes here? I just like to know the underpinnings.
Yeah,
Is there some source I can go to on
It's
that?
all hidden.
Well,
I want to see it. I want to know how it's done.
Yeah, but people that do that, Janine, usually end up causing themselves problems. So, like for me, I'm a techie guy, and yeah, it would be interesting to know, but it's like I got other things to think about.
Well,
you've got other things to think about, like a way to get me up there to straighten out your Wi-Fi and your camera.
Yeah, it's about time you better get up here.
To try to,
I used to have to teach this stuff, and
okay.
now I'm still interested in knowing how to do it.
Well, one thing is to Google it.
Okay, well, to be a little bit more direct to the question,
yes.
The hard drive is going to be designed the same way it's always been designed. A hard drive is a hard drive.
Right.
And on that hard drive, it's going to have sectors, and it's going to have blocks, and it's going to have bits. So those pieces aren't going away or aren't going to change.
Okay.
With the filing system, how the filing system changes is the directory, for instance, on the that keeps track of where things are. That will change, but not in a great way. What's more important is the controller that decides when it has a request, what to do with that request. Here is a collection of stuff. How should I handle this collection of stuff? Because the applications and such, as well as the operating system, will point to a file, and that file is, let's say, is in space A2 through L28, and then the operating system or the file system then has to decide, okay, because he wants to copy it, because he wants to clone it, because he wants to write it, whatever it is.
Right.
How can I most effectively do that action? And in the old days, the instruction set might have been go to the first sector, first block, and copy that into memory. Run over here and write that down, and then go back and forth. Whereas the new set of instructions will be to maybe to copy that and to write it to two different places at the same time, and then go back. So, I mean, it's not the format, it's not the hardware layer that's changing. It is the path upon which to accomplish things. And
changing the algorithm.
Yes, yes. And while that will be interesting, this has never ever been something that is, as Steve says, over the head. It has never been something we've really, as users, have never ever been involved with or really gotten into the meat of in that how the filing system operates.
Robert,
hard drive is.
Last time I messed with all that stuff was back in the Apple II days, where we could go into the tracks and sectors, and instead of saying that this piece of software is created by the company, we could go in and change the text and stuff. And that was fun for the time, but it's like, who cares, as long as it does the job that I need it to do. And that's my main thoughts,
Well, yeah, I want to know that I want it to be seamless. I want it to be fast, but my curiosity is such that I just want to know how they're doing.
I'm going to beg out for a moment, people.
Go ahead.
Janine?
Yeah.
If you really want to dig into it, the ultimate authority for Apple technical stuff is Apple. And for the really technical stuff, it's the developer site or developer part of the website. If you don't have an account, I believe you can still get a free one. And
All right.
anybody can poke around and read documents there. You don't even have to give them a credit card or pay any money. Although
Okay.
there's plenty of opportunities to pay several $100s or more for a paid developer account, but just poke around and skip over those, and you'll eventually, I think, come to the place where you can create a free account if you don't already have one. Once you've done that, you can log in and you'll have access to all the same reference material that
Okay.
Apple developers internally and all the third-party developers for Apple have for their work. And that would include, I'm sure, upcoming stuff, including the new file system. But be aware, it's going to get very technical very fast. But
I don't
if you really want to dig into it, that's the place to go. Now, what I would suggest, either before you do that or in parallel maybe, is do what someone else suggested. Go on and do a little Googling and see if you can find something
All right.
that seems to be accurate and the site
Sure.
seems to be reliable and maybe it's a little more understandable, and let those sites refer you back to the developer side if they happen to do that, because the developer site isn't going to refer you out to these other ones probably.
Good
So-
point.
And you know what? If you are looking for some specific stuff, Macworld.com has a lot of good stuff on there that explains things. But if it's too technical, you don't need to be concerned about it. That's the way Macworld works.
Right.
I got. Okay. Thank you all.
That would actually be a very good place to start. Is just go do a search on Macworld's website, see what you can find out about it there. And if you're not satisfied with what you get there, then you can always dig further on the web.
Right.
Sounds like a fun adventure.
You're going to be amused for hours, I guarantee it.
I've got kind of a quick question. I don't know if anybody's followed the Broad Pawn hack that can be done with wireless. I've been following a little bit, and apparently Apple only updated 10.12.6. Anything prior to that on certain machines, they didn't fix the hack. And I don't know if anybody's on that or not, but they listed that they're no longer supporting the Generation 5 Apple router, the Apple Extreme router, and that has that chip in it. But there's a gentleman on Macintosh that he actually went through some of that stuff himself, going through the problem with that, on what machines are covered, which ones aren't, and from what he could figure out why Apple didn't update certain portions of that.
Is this all based on the Broadcom chip that's in the Apple product?
Broadcom 43XX.
Okay.
And basically the driver that Broadcom writes for it is augmented with software from the operating system. And it's kind of they kind of merge together to work as one driver, depending upon the operating system that you're running, from the way that I understand it. But the firmware that shows in about this Mac, and you go and get, and if you click on Wi-Fi, it'll give you the Apple driver that is listed for it.
Right.
Anything that's 7, though, it's basically the machines that are between, I think, 2012 to newest. If you're running anything under 10.12.5 back to Yosemite, they didn't fix that portion of that driver. You have to upgrade to 10.12.6 in order for it to be protected. Now, this guy came up, they said even older machines they weren't going to go back and fix, but apparently from what he can tell, the older drivers, if you're running the driver 5 dot whatever, it's not going to be affected. Now, but there's no way to find out what driver Apple's using on the Apple router Extreme. And since I have the Generation 5 and it has the Wi-Fi, I was trying to find out if that is actually affected or not, since Apple stopped supporting that. in the article that they wrote. So I was just wondering if anybody else had, you know, studied any of that.
Never heard about it. Never heard about that at all.
Really? Yeah, well, it's called BroadPON, and
right, BroadPON.
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's actually affected Linux. It's affected Windows. Broadcom is supposed to come out with an update for those systems, but it also, like I was saying, the driver that they write and the operating system, it's like two drivers merged into one.
How does it affect the computer?
Well, what it is they can actually get in there and crash it.
Oh, in other words,
to it and automatically.
It's open for somebody to get in and mess with it.
Oh, it basically they could do a remote into your router.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Over the internet.
Or if you're on the Wi-Fi, iOS 10.3, they covered that hack in there, but anything prior to that, it's open even on iOS's. So it's not something that was really built, but it was one of the things that they updated in 10.12.6.
Are you saying it's in the Mac OS or in the iOS?
It's both.
Both.
And it depends upon the Broadcom chip, because it has to do with the way they design that chip and the way it works. So it's actually a hardware and software problem.
Hey, I don't work there anymore. Don't blame me.
No, I was just bringing it up, and I was wondering if anybody else had heard anything on it. So,
how can I find out if what version of the chip is in, say, my router?
You should be able to go to About This Mac. In the router, you can't because the system is encrypted.
Oh,
so the gentleman that if you go to Macintosh, I don't know if anybody ever goes to Macintosh, and if you go there, they have a thing about security, and in fact, they have a whole article, people writing in on the forum about it, and that's pretty informative. So that's what I would suggest doing as far as learning more about it. The guy, one of the gentlemen that was on there, he actually went ahead. He's a programmer for over 20 years, and he went in and did his own testing on different things. And he actually gives, there's a part right here, known to be vulnerable running OS 10.10 through 10.12.5, firmware version 7.x. And it's the MacBook Pros. In fact, if I probably launch it on here, I can put it on the screen and show people. So
I don't know if the time would be well spent, because most of us haven't had a problem like that.
Well, no, it isn't that you would have a problem. It's just that it's a vulnerability to all of us if it's not fixed. He talks about. I just wanted to show you one part here on it real quick. I didn't want to take a whole lot of time with it, so
go for it.
Let me go ahead and launch it here. Okay. So I need to do. I haven't done the screen share yet, so let's see.
Okay, so what you're going to do, Frank, is you got it. You got it figured.
So basically, what I'm doing is this guy here, David Epson. He's the guy who went ahead and talked about it, and he's talking about different things, what's going on, what Macs are affected and what aren't, from what he can see. So, but a lot of people have written in, and basically what they're doing is they're, let me see if I can go there. And if you go to System Report and click on Wi-Fi, right here, it'll tell you what version. See, I'm on mine, since I've got an early 2008 iMac. I have that chip, but I'm running version, what's in parentheses, he says, is 5.10.131.3616. What he's talking about is anything Yosemite or newer, what if you have the Broadcom BCM 43XX chip, then your system between running 10.10 and 10.12.5 can be affected.
So you're saying if you run in 10.12.5, it's not affected, but 10.12.3 it is, or what are you saying?
Between 10.10.5 and, well, he says right down here, no invulnerability if running OS 10.10 through 10.12.5, the firmware version 7.x.
Yeah, but you can't necessarily change the firmware version on your router.
Well, no, the router, we can't figure out what the firmware version is. Apple's the only one who can update that. But my version, which is generation 5, Apple said if you go to the Apple page that talks about this, it says that they're dropping support on the generation 5 Apple.
Yeah, they want you to buy a new part. Yes.
So.
What are we talking about?
They don't want to mess with it. They just want to get a new part in there.
We're talking about the firmware on what?
The Apple router Extreme. I have an Apple router.
The Wi-Fi chip, right?
5. Apple is dropping support on that, and it does have the chip, the BCM 43XX. Are you familiar with Broadcom, Robert?
Right. Yes. Are you trying to get around a known problem?
Well, I was just trying to make sure that I'm not exposed if somebody really wanted to try to break into my wireless. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. I do. I hear you. And I will use all day long any of those devices that people can't upgrade and don't feel safe with. Because they work quite well, and my expectation of vulnerability is so extremely low that it's a non-issue. But if you care and you can upgrade it, go for it. If you can't, it's your position.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Frank, don't you have a modem between your Apple Extreme and the internet? Don't you have a modem in between that from whoever your ISP is?
I'm using my Apple router as an AP.
Right. Any kind of wireless traffic that's used there is susceptible to the potential issues, but we're speaking of something that is very, very, very unlikely event, but some people want to cover their belts and suspenders, and that's perfectly fine. And so sometimes there's an answer to upgrading the firmware, and sometimes there's not.
Right. Well, I was just saying that Apple explained that on their page when they came out with the updates for iOS 10.3 and 10.12.6.
Any time that there is a weakness that is found, it is clearly an Apple worthy of Apple's time to go ahead and resolve those potential security flaws. And at the same time, they're wise to share with everyone else that this is what we're doing. We're changing things. Where there is a weakness in the Broadcom chip, we've covered it, but we're not covering it from these positions back. That's not to say that those positions back, those models back, are not secure devices. They just don't happen to take into consideration this weakness within this chip.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I was just reading a lot about it. I do read Macintosh a lot. They have a lot of good people on there, and a lot of good articles.
If I was a business and if I was doing work for Target or some department store who was using old modems, I would get rid of those because I would be processing potentially, and if I was using wireless, which wouldn't be the case. But in a situation where you're processing hundreds or thousands of credit card transactions a day, those are the kinds of places that you don't want insecure equipment. And so, but if you're not doing that, I typically say, well, you're not, you may think you have good, important stuff, but most people aren't going to care.
Yeah.
Well, for instance, was it Target about 2 years ago had a bunch of customer data stolen from it?
Right.
That
My brother's credit card got hit with that.
Right. I don't necessarily think that's what caused it.
That had nothing to do with any out of date equipment. That was a outside consultant that they hired to do work, and they have regularly, 20-30% of their work is done by outside consultants. And outside sales consultants who had access to the equipment, purposely put onto their equipment malware that captured data. It had nothing to do with wireless or wired or anything else.
I see. It was an intervention that did it, not necessarily from outside, but from inside.
That's right. That was right.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, anyway, real quick, I have my cable interface. I don't call it a modem because it doesn't modem. I call it a cable interface. Anyway, and then I got a Fortinet router, and then I've got my Apple router that I use for an access point.
You have a Fortinet?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
A 60D.
Okay. All right.
Somebody bought it for my birthday for me. So.
All right. It's good stuff. It is certainly capable of all kinds of management, for network management, and it's often more than it's more than what most people need. It's like the person who buys a 16-cylinder car. Awesome cars, but should you need to have them maintained, well, it'll cost you a little bit more. But once it's
I don't buy the the yearly thing for everything else on it.
Right. Well, that's too is the problem. You buy some equipment. Often you'll buy a Cisco routers and stuff like that, even though they purchased what's the blue one? Linksys. If you purchase high-end Cisco stuff, you have to have an annual agreement, service agreement, to be able to get updates and downloads and all that kind of stuff. And if you let it lapse, you can't any longer get updates for that device or service or anything else. So
unless you know somebody who has an account.
Okay, but it's often tied to the device for the particular device sometimes. But
right, I understand that.
But I like high-end stuff, but I'm more interested in. It's interesting. What is there's a for credit card processing, we're all subject. They are subject to certain protocols. I'm not remembering what that name is. That
the credit card processing?
Yeah.
Oh.
What? I'm doing card.
You're not talking about secured socket layer.
No, not SSL. That they're not. Darn it. Where is? It's not ISO. Well, they all have to follow some. Anyways,
the certain protocol
right.
Card readers and everything else has to have in order to
exactly. And without specifically speaking about it, I have a client that needs a credit card processor in 2 different locations to be able to operate the transactions that occur in one location. And in the same way that I have some clients in the medical industry, the HIPAA laws. I have a client, and you'll often walk into your medical office and you'll want to do something, and they go, "Oh, we can't do that for HIPAA regulations." You've gone into the pharmacy and you now have to stand 12 feet back from the front counter while the person's up there for HIPAA regulations and all this kind of stuff. And you hear on the phone a lot of the time, for your security and protection, we're going to blah, blah, blah. And so many different things are misunderstood and abused, the requirements that we have to follow. And because we get scared and we think, well, we can't do that because HIPAA says so. Imagining that it is, why sales that it is, etc. I had a client, an escrow client, he didn't think he could use wireless technology in his building, and it all had to be wired because wireless was insecure. Without understanding, well, we talk to the president talks to people all the time, and the military talks to them. They don't have a wired connection. They're using wireless. The fact that you're using wireless does not mean that it is insecure. Right. It just means you have to use the proper protocols within the wireless industry. Right. The same thing with credit cards. You can imagine that a bad guy, a scenario where if you had processing here and the transaction here, if they were in the same building, wired together, all would be very secure. Nobody can get in there. But if you had the transactions here and the processing in that same spot and also in another building elsewhere, well, that's the scenario of the bad guy is elsewhere, and he's able to control the processing of transactions. So people are fearful. Oh no, that can't happen. You can't have two processors, different places. They have to be in the same place. Well, these are the guys that, through fear, through lack of understanding, promote, you can't do that. It's not allowed. Based upon such and such, you can't do that. And the reality is, you can do anything, given enough time and money, because actual understanding of the situation will make it such that you can do things. The regulations, I'm forgetting what they are for credit card processing, don't require that the two things have to be in the same building. They don't require that they have to be wired together. What they require is a secure transmission. And through things like VPNs, you have a secure transmission. And whether it happens over a direct connection with nothing else there, or a VPN, which is a secured transmission between two places, you are effectively having a closed network. That's right. Exactly what VPNs are all about. So understanding the needs, understanding the available solutions will allow you to solve any problem that needs to be solved without worrying about the people that, because you've never done it before, it doesn't mean it's impossible. Right. I over and over again am confronted with people that say, well, you can't do that. That's impossible. No one will let you do that. Well, that just means you've never done this before. And so let me show you how it can be done to follow all the rules. Tell me what the rules are, and then we'll follow the rules and we'll make it happen. So I applaud you to have a nice FortiGate router. They're not cheap. They're extremely capable, but they're overkill for most situations. It doesn't mean it's not going to perform very well in yours, because you're like so many different things. You're going to use, a small percentage of the capabilities of the router, but it's fine and happy doing that. It's not really going to use up any excess power. Maybe you might use a little bit more, but that's fine. You're in a good shape, good equipment. Move on.
Yeah. Well, I have a Linksys old 610, and I put DDWRT on it. It's like an enterprise router with that. And but the problem was when I got my 10100 connection, the best I could do on the Linksys was about 90 megabit download. FortiGate, I'm doing 125. And I have no latency on the network.
Okay. You've got yourself covered. You got your latency down, your speed up, you're in good shape.
Yep. So
I'm impressed. You're the kind of guy I'd hire.
I try. Thanks.
Okay, guys, I'm going to show you a couple of what little stuff I've got. Let me get out of this. So here in photos, and it's not completely updated, but this is a couple of new things that they've added to memories. And this is sort of like, Google's been doing this for the last couple of years if you're putting photos up in Google. I mean, I was surprised that as I was scrolling through this the other day, that, that picture looks familiar. Remember, we used that for Affinity Photo, and it pulled that out because it saw that I was doing something on it. This happens to be my brother's house in Huntington Beach, and there's 5 or 6 events, mostly Christmas Eve parties, and you see it built all these pictures into a gatherings in Huntington Beach over the years. It automatically did this all by itself. And here it went through and it pulled out portraits of people that I had named. So it pulled that out. And here it pulled out all the dogs that we've had over the years that I've got pictures of.
Is it using face recognition to sort the pictures?
No, I guess it was just, the machine language or whatever it was, John, I had made a photo album up called My Dogs. Over the years,
you've already done the sorting.
I'd already done the dog, so apparently it figured out,
Okay.
well, let's go ahead and make a memories thing out of it or whatever it is.
Okay.
And I thought that was pretty clever. And then here's my sister and brother-in-law, and then March and I, based on specific days, this happened to be, I don't know, where at Plaza Square Park. Apparently that's the name of the shopping center where this restaurant's located at. So I was surprised that it's using the geolocation. It's doing a lot of different things that it just generated on the fly, which was kind of interesting. Now, like, these are pictures my friend gave me. He borrowed my camera and took some pictures of him and his family. So I created a special album there so it doesn't get mixed in with mine, and it automatically slapped that together. So this is all brand new with the latest version of photos. If it didn't know what to do, it kind of generated this on the fly here. And here was part of the pictures from our trip in October when we went to from Boston up to Nova Scotia. And so it pulled these pictures out, and I guess it figured, well, one of the locations was Halifax, so I'll use Halifax as a reference. So I thought that was kind of nice. And
hey, Greg.
Yes.
There's something unusual about that picture. I can't quite, wait a minute, go back to the Halifax. Oh, wait, Greg's wearing a tie. I've never seen you in a tie before.
Hey, for 35 years, I wore a tie every day. I don't miss that too much anymore.
Hey, Greg.
My way of getting even was to have slightly insulting ties.
Yeah.
Hey, Greg.
I had about 150 of them at one time. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on that thing with the Halifax there, do you have the option, like, let's say you don't like Halifax, can you change that to Nova Scotia? Let's
Good
say
point. You know, I have no idea.
Sign it and you're stuck with it.
I don't know whether you have. Okay. I don't know whether you have an option to edit this. I would assume that there's a. Well, let's see what we get here. Yeah, apparently I can.
Yeah.
So it looks to me like I could rename it here. I think that's how it's spelled.
Yeah, that's right.
There we
Look
go.
at that. How about that?
So that's kind of cool. I mean, that's you know, I mean, I've got my pictures and Marsh's pictures in 2 separate albums, and it went through and figured that out and put them all together. So it didn't create a new album. It created what they call a memory based on that information from that particular day. So that was kind of clever. I think this is kind of a neat idea. So that's just one, because the photos hasn't been updated completely yet. So that's just one aspect of that. Over in Mail, and I'm not 100% sure that they didn't do this before, but when you're in full screen, but I think it's going to do it in the normal if you don't run full screen. You can see I finally switched over my menus to like the reverse type. It took me a long time getting used to black borders and white letters, let me tell you. And I'm trying to get used to full screen, which on a laptop makes a lot of sense because you want that extra space. Well, let's say, as an example, I want to send a letter back to this guy. Here's this RV dealer inviting me to come to a show back in, there's going to be here in October. We're going to have Pomona. They're inviting me to come back there to North Carolina so that I can buy an RV from them directly. Well, if I'm going to buy a new one, I might as well buy it local. Why would I want to buy it across the country? But if I come over here and I go to make a brand new message, that's kind of a cool feature.
Well, you can go to Las Vegas to save the taxes.
Hey, yeah.
Well, that's interesting, John. I thought so too. And you know what? Remember when I bought the last motorhome I had, we actually bought it, took delivery of it just inside the Nevada border, because John was with me. We drove the old motorhome over there on our way to Comdex. The guy met us there, cracked windshield and all. I had to get that fixed after the fact. And we went on and we spent 3 nights or whatever it was at Comdex at Circus, which no longer has an RV park. And then we drove it back at the end of after the end of Comdex. And you had to, in order to save the sales tax, the way the law was written back then, within the first year of ownership, first off you had to take delivery of it outside of California. And the first year of ownership, it had to have 6 months of being stored in another state, not in California, in order to qualify for saving the sales tax. So I had a friend of mine who had who owns several houses in Havasu, and he had built a couple of concrete pads on his property that my folks used to take their motorhome over all the time. So I took it over there one time, took a picture of it sitting there, and for all practical purposes, it was there for the first 6 months. So So I just said, you know, I mean, we would have taken it over there if we needed to, but nobody ever bothered to check. Well, unfortunately, the way the laws have changed, and I did a lot of research on this, I thought, well, if I buy it from a private seller, I won't have to pay a sales tax. Actually, that's not true anymore.
Oh,
theoretically, if you sell something to anybody, that new person is supposed to pay sales tax for anything. In the case
inside
of vehicles,
California, outside California, doesn't matter.
Doesn't make any difference. If you buy it from a dealer outside of California, they're supposed to charge you California sales tax. They don't have to. They're supposed to. But when I go to register it in California, I'll pay it at the time of registration.
Well,
so the only trick would be to have to register it in some place like Montana if you've got an LLC up there. And believe me, on the RV webs, a lot of people are doing that. And then they get a P.O. box or whatever, and they register it up in Montana. Well, that's a lot of hassle if they catch you doing that down the road.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any difference no matter where I buy it from. Theoretically, I'm going to get stuck for 7%.
Okay.
7% tax is what it is in California.
Yeah, well, they find ways to get you no matter what.
Well, I have a real hard time of you've already paid sales tax on it once. Why should you have to pay tax on top of tax on top of tax?
I know.
They've been doing it to us for gas, and thank you, Governor Brown. We're going to be doing it again here in November, and then again sometime next year we're going to be paying tax on tax.
Greg,
Greg, getting back to
wait a second, Bart.
Okay.
Wait a second. I started. I've had this problem going on since Diane got laid off from Starbucks when she went, and this was back in 2014. They hired her in August. They got rid of the whole department across the country, 75 people across the United States in her department in January. That's 5 months. And she had a problem and accidentally filled out a form wrong. She didn't file the minute she was laid off. She waited half a month or a month. And now they say, oh, well, you did this. You committed fraud and you did this, you did that. And she went to a hearing here locally in La Palma, and the guy there, or the judge, said, no, this is why we're not gonna, you got to pay it back. And so she was so fed up, she didn't want to do it anymore, and we're going to pay it back. And I said, no. I says, that's our money. If everything had gone right, you would be entitled to 7 weeks of unemployment. Well, they looked and said, well, in March, when you said you didn't have work, you were working for the County of Orange. And she said, but the paper she thought she was filling out was for February, because March and February of 2015 are the same dates, the same days for both months. And so I took it over and I wrote a letter, and I actually put in, what does fraud, the definition of fraud and the definition of this. And I says, I would appreciate it if you do some, be courteous, not courteous, but, and let this alone, and let her keep what she's gotten, because otherwise, if she had done everything right, she would have had more money. And got back a letter the other day, and it's like they didn't even listen. They didn't even look at it. They must have had a person lower, because this was going to go to the board of EDD, and they must have had somebody lower than the board read it and make suggestions to the board for how to handle this thing. And it's like, it's crap. Talk about the state. I just wanted to go up there to Governor Brown and say, what kind of shit is this? My wife hasn't taken unemployment at all the years she's been employed, and she's been self-employed for most of the years that I've known her. And you get screwed every way to Sunday, and they don't care.
No, you're right. They don't.
So.
Okay, this was on Conan. I've got to kill the...
Greg,
hang on. Go ahead.
Yeah, before you do that, I got a question on the new mail program and the new version. I've had a problem for about a year now, where my mail doesn't seem to want to download, even though the settings are right, from my GoDaddy accounts where I have my email. And I'm wondering if they've done anything in the new version that potentially might resolve that issue.
Nothing that I've read about, let me put it that way, but I don't know, you might be familiar with that, Robert. Have you run across anything that where they've solved some mail problems? You're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, no, I just think having myself on mute is a polite thing to do, given all of what I accomplished. But anyway, point is, I think with mail, I don't think you're going to find any changes within mail that will resolve your problems. But one of the things that you might want to take a look at is in mail is there is a setting in your accounts area, and let me go to a there we go. There's a setting in accounts.
Why don't you share that out, Robert?
Oh goodness, let's see, how do I do that?
Click on the share screen down there in the toolbar.
Yep. Okay.
And then select either, and then you can just select desktop and go. And
I'm clicking on share. Okay, hold on. I've got a spinning rainbow, unfortunately. Give that a moment. There we go. Okay.
Just like the 1960s, the spinning rainbow.
I like this one. So if I select that, obviously I have way too many screens here to go with. Am I sharing it?
No, you haven't clicked OK or whatever it is.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. Got it.
Got it. So I'm not sure what you all see. But, here is the mail preferences accounts window. If you're on a POP type of account, server settings will have a box down here that says automatically manage connection settings, and uncheck that for most Google. For most GoDaddy accounts, to have it not manage the automatically match it. When it's not automatically, when it is unchecked, you will then have the ability to manually set these items, and you'll have better luck. And that'll be both available for the POP settings as well as the SMTP settings. Uncheck your automatically managed connection settings for GoDaddy, and I think you'll have better luck.
POP is incoming for incoming.
I think mine is. Excuse me, Bruce. I think mine is unchecked if I remember correctly. Now I notice you're using port 465. I don't know what port I'm using, but I'm going to try that same port, see if that works.
Yeah, I'm using 465 for SSL and 995 for incoming SSL.
Bart, take a command, do a Command Shift 3, and take a screen snapshot so you got that reference later.
Oh, okay. 1 minute. I do.
That way you won't be able to lose. You won't lose it. Get it back like it was.
3. Nothing. I heard a beep.
Command Shift 4.
Command Shift 4.
Well, 3 would do the whole screen. 4 would do the window.
Nothing.
4 gives you the crosshairs. You do Command Shift 4 space bar, and the window that you're going to take a shot of, Greg, when
highlighted.
Is highlighted, right?
Right, you can keep hitting the space bar.
Oh, okay. Now the whole screen is,
Okay,
great. What do I do now?
Click it.
Click on the window you want to take stuff.
It won't, because it's the whole window. So just if you got the whole screen lit up, just click the mouse button now.
Bart, you probably should have heard the shutter.
Camera click, yeah.
Yeah.
Curiously, can you guys see all of my screen, or do you just see?
We're only seeing it. It depends on how you do the share. If you do the share of desktop, we see your entire desktop. If you do a share of the window of that window, we only see that window.
Huh, yeah. Very interesting. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so we're all good?
Yep.
Yeah, now, where is the screenshot stored?
Interrupt just a second for Bart. He was talking about the sales tax on getting a new iMac.
Yes.
I've had very good results buying from B&H Photo in New York. That's where I got mine.
That's true. But the way the law reads, depends on how the vendors are doing it. The way the law reads is they're supposed to figure out where you live, where you're taking delivery, that's what counts, and charge you the appropriate sales tax there. Not every company does that. Some do and some don't because they're arguing about that or whatever it is. It's not, that one's not being enforced. But the way they get around it for the vehicle tax, as I've been talking to a couple of lawyers about this, is at some point in time I have to get that vehicle registered here in California, and they're going to nail me that 7% there if they see that it hadn't been paid before.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't have to register the IMAX, so I guess I'm okay.
There you go. There
Yeah,
you go.
and,
I don't plan to buy
I'll tell you
it.
something else too. Adorama, also in New York, they do the same thing. They don't collect the sales tax. So, like on cameras, I buy from either B&H or Adorama, and of course,
Yeah.
you don't have to register those in California. So you beat it there.
Now, for those of you who don't live in California, if you live in Oregon or New Mexico or
Where there is no sales tax.
wherever, you can go to LA Computer, which is in Anaheim, and they advertise that if you buy from them and you don't live in California, you won't have to pay any sales tax on whatever you buy, and they'll ship it anywhere, even though they have a walk-in store there too. The walk-in store looks like a small Apple store. It's about a mile west of the Anaheim Fry's Electronics in Anaheim on, well, it's on a side street off of La Palma, actually.
Okay.
And so that's a good place. And I bought refurbished equipment from them, Apple equipment, and never had any problems, both in person or by shipping it here. So I can recommend them if you're just looking to save some tax or something. They do sell new and used equipment, I think, new and refurb.
About New Mexico, just so that's where I live. If you buy something online and you live in New Mexico, they will charge you no sales tax as long as they do not have a business presence in the state.
Right.
Right.
Oregon and Washington are the same way. But unfortunately for vehicles, you don't get a choice.
Yeah, and secondly, about vehicles, we don't have a sales tax on vehicles per se. They have an excise tax.
Right.
3%.
Yeah, it's real funny. They don't call the 7% here in California a sales tax. It's called a usage fee. I mean that's how they get around it. Apparently, that means who's ever using the vehicle in name is the one that pays the usage fee.
Yeah. Well, if you sell a used car here, you have to. They can rely on Honest Engine. Of course, who does that? When you sell the car, you have to fill out a bill of sale and put down the sale amount, and the buyer would then pay the 3% tax. Well, we don't have a sales tax. The downside of this, we have a 7% gross receipts tax, which is only in about 5 states, which pisses me off, because you have to pay taxes on services. So if Steve was out doing a service to a customer on a computer and you charge him a fee, he'd have to maintain what do they call it?
Service tax.
Board of Equalization tax for
Right.
Well, the thing is, Bob, I've had to deal with that all the time, and the only thing I have to charge tax on is resale of hardware that I buy for the customer and mark it up and resell it to them. Labor is exempt.
Yeah, well, labor's not exempt here.
Oh, I'm not coming over there quickly.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It really is a pain for anything you do, except for miracles.
And then what happens? The money goes to Washington, and they spend it the way they want.
Well, we have a corrupt government here. They do a pretty good job.
Boy, I tell you, I've never been.
We spend everything here on the bullet train, because we need a bullet train that runs through Fresno really bad.
Oh yeah.
And so I think the idea of a bullet train that takes 6 hours rather than driving 8 hours from LA to San Francisco makes a lot of sense.
Well, actually, 1 minute, you got to put it down. It will take, when it's done, it will take 8 hours, because the terminus is not going to be in Union Station. It's going to be out in Palmdale or Lancaster or something like that. And you'll have to transfer to a conventional train if you want to go to Union Station. So the whole thing is absolutely absurd. It's the most absurd thing imaginable. And
Well,
you're
that's Governor Moonbeam for you. That's what you get when we have a governor with a nickname Moonbeam.
Yeah. But you have to have a state legislature to go along with that. So
that's true.
The whole damn legislature.
The nice thing is there's plenty of stupid people in government that can help them out. So
you just have to ask. You just have to ask, where's the money?
That's true.
Who's getting paid for this?
Oh, it's just terrible. It's, you know, in Washington, it's these guys in Congress and senators and all that crap, and they are so on the take. It is ridiculous. Wish they.
Okay, before we get too far down, I found this the other day, and I wanted to show it to you guys. I love watching these. Yeah, so I've got to pause the recording because I can't put this at YouTube either if I don't. So I'll pause the recording temporarily there. Oops, no.
I gotta go, guys. See you next time.
Okay, Bob. Good seeing ya.
Bye.
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 Bye, Bob.
So I don't know if the audio is going to work properly or not. We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Knew Instagram was an obvious place for Apple.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
To be. Many of the photos posted on Instagram are taken with Apple products, so it's a natural fit.
A perfect place for us to showcase our ideas, our products, our voice.
But instead, Apple CEO Tim Cook has demanded that the feed consists solely of Photoshop pictures of his head on bodybuilders' bodies.
Good Photoshop, like really bad Photoshop.
We have the best graphic designers in the world.
But Mr. Cook was like, no, 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 let me do it. I can make these. It's an embarrassment.
We asked Tim, is this just for the launch? Will these photos be replaced at some point?
Cook said, no, no. This will be my legacy. Steve Jobs had the iPhone. Let me have this. Let me show my ripped torso to the world. I said, Tim, that's not your torso. And he said, quiet! That is my torso, you insufferable European twit!
I miss Steve Jobs.
I miss Steve Jobs so bad. Why did he leave? What?
Oh well, I love these stupid things. So.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
I have a link I'll send to you, and you can, I guess, forward it to the distribution list you're using for the meetings. It's from an Apple consultant. Some of you probably know him. His name is Rick Thews, the iMentor.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
He moved way out there. I couldn't believe it. He used to come, work with me on the question and answers over at Leisure World.
Right, and back in mid-July, one of his blog entries was about himself upgrading to the 10.13 public beta of High Sierra, and all the problems he had with it, primarily because of the difference in file system and some other problems that it was beyond that. For instance, when he migrated using the setup assistant or whatever it is, only 2 of 4 accounts came over, and you can read it. And he made some mistakes that, as a consultant, I don't think he should have. He should have backed up his old system with a clone first, and he should have done it. He did time machine backups, but what he didn't do apparently is he should have done one last manual backup with Time Machine by just telling it to back up now, and then turned off Time Machine so that he knew exactly where it was in his data, what was on there and what wasn't, and then he could have gone ahead and upgraded it. But the problem is when he wanted to downgrade back, he found out he had problems with the old tools. The old tools like this utility don't understand, on older machines, don't understand that new file format, so really, you're kind of stuck and repartitioned. So he had a little trouble getting things back, but he did, and I think he ended up maybe losing some data over it. But you guys can read it for yourselves when you get time. I'll send the link to Greg, and Greg, you can forward the email to the distribution list when you get it. And
okay. Well, I can tell you right away. What I did is I have both Super Duper and Carbon Copy Cloner. Now, both the free versions of both those programs will let you do a full clone copy, so for free. I have purchased versions of both those because I had customers that had both, and I wanted to be real familiar with both of them. I personally like Carbon Copy Cloner better, but that's just me. They both work just as well.
Right, but
so I took an external drive, and I went ahead and made a complete clone of that drive onto that external drive, just in case, because I could always boot to that drive.
Right, that's
and then I went ahead and did the developer, signed up to be a developer, which I've been for a couple of years, the free level, and went ahead and downloaded it and installed it. And you don't need to do data migration or whatever. It's just like installing a new operating system. It just, on the fly, it made all the changes for me. It just took a while. It took about an hour, hour and a half, something like that, because it rebooted itself a couple of times during the process. Like I said right now, I personally would not recommend anybody to do this unless you just got the time to play with it, which in my case, that was true. And also I wanted to see what it was going to offer, because I find right now a couple things don't work the way they should work. Right. And already they've been fixed in various beta previews so far. And I'm on the 5th one right now. I'm on the 3rd one that I've done, but it's version number 5. I would wait till there's a couple of them out.
Right, and that was another thing, Greg.
I can always boot back to the old drive. That's not a problem.
That was another thing he didn't do that you did, and he should have done, is that he should have installed it first on a different drive, like an external drive, instead of just going right to his main internal drive. You know.
Well, I did. I went to the main internal drive, but I had made a clone of that prior to that, figuring, okay, I'll know in a couple of days if it sucks or if it's livable. Right. And like in the case of iOS 11, I did it on my iPad, not on my iPhone, because I figured, well, if the iPad's screwed up, I can always get it back. I can get them both back, but I don't want to be without the iPhone just in case. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Did you use the disk utility to wipe out your drive before you load?
No, you don't need to. For the upgrade? Nope, you don't need to.
No, I don't mean upgrade. I mean, you mean from one version to another version? You don't need to?
When you load the developer preview, when you finally download everything and got it all ready to install like you would a normal operating system, it's all invisible to you from that point on.
Okay. I've always deleted everything and formatted the hard drive and.
Well, you know what? I will probably do that, John, when the real version comes out.
Oh, okay.
I'll probably make a complete backup of what I've got again. Right. And I'll use data migration. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but data migration is a plus and a minus. You have to understand how it works. Right. When you do it all as one step, you download a new operating system and you install it, and it goes to do a data migration, and you didn't log out and start it over again. Mm-hmm. You're in there as a super user, almost like a root user. Okay. So that it can copy over the Greg Lock files, the Marshall Lock files, the Floyd files, whatever. Yeah. If you install the operating system, bail out, and then want to go back, now you're logged in as Greg Lock, okay? And now I want to go back and run data migration by itself. It won't work for Greg Lock files. Why? Because Greg Lock is logged in, and some of those files are in use, and I can't take the old files and overwrite the new files.
Okay.
And logically, that makes sense. So the workaround is to temporarily create a dummy admin user, something brilliant like Test or Floyd or Harvey or whatever, and as Floyd or Harvey do a data migration, there is no Floyd or Harvey home directory on any of those old backups. You get it all over there, and then log out, log back in as Greg, and trash the temporary admin user.
Okay.
So you just have to be aware that happens.
Okay, sure.
Greg, could I speak to that point for a moment? Okay, I've had some experience now with migrating stuff from old to new Macs and upgrading, and I've learned a little bit about the differences in these different techniques and what works and what doesn't. And one of the first, let me recommend a book that if any of you haven't already got it, the book by Joe Kissel, Take Control of Upgrading to Sierra or Upgrading to Yosemite or El Capitan.
By the way, in case people don't realize, Bruce, those are the old those are the old books that were available from the Tidbits people, and the Tidbits, Adam Anks and his wife Tanya, sold that division off to Joe, who had written about half the books anyway.
Correct.
And he is great to deal with. He's given you. I've gotten several books from him where if you buy 2 or 3, you get an extra discount, which is kind of nice. So,
right.
So those are great books. Those Take Control books are great.
Every major release of OS revises that title and changes the name to match the OS name.
Yeah.
And you want to figure out what operating system you're going to migrate to, whether it's Sierra, High Sierra, or one of the previous ones, and get that book. They're only $10 as a PDF. Even if you already have one of the other versions, get the one that matches what you're about to do for $10. And in there, he explains in great detail what the difference is between set up a system, which runs the first time you boot a brand new Mac out of the box, and migration assistant, which lives in the utilities folder on all modern Macs. They're not the same. They look the same. They're similar. They do similar things, but they're not the same. And he says by far the preferable way to do things is to use Setup Assistant when you first turn on a new Mac or when you first install a new major release and that program runs. But to do that, you have to be prepared with your old Mac and a cable or a method to get the data over there. And my favorite way to do it still is to put that old Mac in target disk mode and have the correct cables and adapters to go interface on the old to the new. It's faster than Time Machine, and it's more reliable than some network connections would be. And it's easier to go back if you have to.
Right.
Now, let me say one other thing. Setup Assistant is made to run once and only once because it puts a hidden file on. I don't know if it adds or removes a hidden file on your internal hard drive, but every time OS X boots up, it looks for that file. And if that file is, whichever way it is, present or absent, it bypasses Setup Assistant and goes right to the login screen or the desktop. If the file is the other way, in other words, it's absent or present, then it runs Setup Assistant. So if you know where that file is, I have successfully deleted that file or added it in and made it and faked it out to cause it to rerun the Setup Assistant. That's not recommended, but you could do it in an emergency. The reason it's not recommended is because you can lose data if you've already modified that drive. So if you have an image, one of the things I've done sometimes is take an image of the brand new Mac before you turn it on by booting it up in target disk mode before you ever turn it on the normal way, and then hook it up to one of your existing Macs and use Carbon Copy Cloner or some other method to image the virgin bit pattern on that drive as Apple said it, and then you can always get back. You can erase the internal drive, clone back, tinker with the hidden file if you need to, and it'll be just like it's out of the box again.
Yeah.
Most people, if they do things correctly, should not have to go to all that trouble.
Yeah,
get the book and read it, and you'll see what I mean, or ask me questions.
You're speaking of the real value of Apple's design, and it is true. It's excellent. You can manually run Migration Assistant after the fact via just running it like any other app. It's not the exact same experience. It doesn't do exactly the same, but it's very, very effective to accomplishing what you're trying to do. So in essence, your early books do speak of all of this. They're not expensive. If you don't do it, even if you do it a lot, you'll read it once and benefit to them all. Otherwise, you just go by you're bootstrapping it. But it's all correct. Anyways,
but you will find out, Robert, if as an example, if I went to run Migration Assistant right now, since I'm logged in as me and I'm an administrator as me, it would not overwrite my files because they're open files right now. The best I could do would be to have copy of Greg Locke as a whole directory. Then I have to manually move shit after the fact. So the trick I found to get around that issue is temporarily create a new admin user, log
Right.
in as that admin user,
Exactly.
run the migration assistant, and
Right.
then once I'm up and running, log back in as me and trash that temporary user.
Correct.
That's
You
right.
can't use you cannot use migration assistant on the current user.
Right.
So as long as you're not the current user, you're good to go. No,
Migration
no bottom is allowed.
The setup assistant gets around that because it kind of moves you one more level up.
There is no user logged in at that moment.
That's true. That's true. It's
So,
just
there-
somebody with admin
Well,
capability
there's,
who doesn't
actually,
have an
when you-
account.
When
That's
you run setup assistant, it's probably running as the root user,
Root, probably.
not a normal Mac user.
Right.
And that's why it can do anything and everything. But
Right.
the crux of the problem with setup assistant versus migration assistant is that migration assistant cannot merge two accounts of the same name. It can't
Correct.
do that.
That's right.
Well,
And,
especially if one of them's active.
right. Well, even if it's not, if it sees two existing accounts, it won't let you merge them, I don't think. Setup assistant doesn't have that limitation because setup
That's true.
assistant assumes that there's no user data
It's a clean Mac.
on the drive that you're migrating to, the new Mac or the new operating system.
Yeah. Okay. You were asking the reason. In my particular case, when they finally release High Sierra as a legit sanctioned operating system, I will probably make a full clone backup of my drive the way it is right now, and I'll probably erase my primary drive, and I'll tell you why. Because I've had it partitioned, Pac, Apple in the last 2 or 3 operating systems has given you that option to have the recovery assistant feature built in, where there's
Right.
a hidden 1 or 2 gig partition out there that you can boot to in a pinch.
Right.
I don't have that, and the reason being, I think, had to do with the fact that I was using the option to have a second boot partition in there. It made that recovery partition the operating system of Mavericks or whatever it was, rather than of Sierra, because I already had that drive partitioned, and so no matter what I do, I never get the current version in there. So I already decided that when the new version comes out, probably not a bad idea to do this anyway. When the new version comes out, is I'll make a full clone and then treat it like a brand new Mac from the start, and let it access that drive and pull the stuff over, so that I do get a bootable recovery partition.
If you were going to do that, I think after you've done the clones, you should also repartition it as one partition.
No, which I've already done that. As far as it's concerned, I've done that now.
Right, and
It's just that I don't have a recovery partition to boot to.
Right, make it the right partition
Yeah.
map, make it the same as the existing
Normal.
file system and all of that.
Yeah, go back to normal is what I got to do.
Right.
So
And if it doesn't have a recovery partition, which at that point it would not have, when you install a new operating system, that should create that partition, and it should put the current recovery software in that partition, and
it should. It should.
And then after that, you should be good to go once everything's installed. But,
Is there some way to verify if you have that recovery partition installed?
Sure, go to Startup Disk and you'll see it.
Okay, so I'll see it as a separate partition then.
Yeah, it's a bootable 1 or 2 gig partition.
And if it's just a whole drive with no partitions in it, then I don't have it.
Right.
Now, I probably don't have it. Would I have to basically do effectively a reformat of the drive to get that?
Yeah, but that's a good question. I'm not sure about that, Robert. I would think he would probably have to reformat the drive, which you could do as part of the new operating system. You can always go into utilities and format the drive. Just make sure you got a full backup somewhere.
Greg, I think that's wrong. You said going to System Preferences Startup Disk. I think if the recovery partition exists, I think it's hidden in that.
All right, well, then when you reboot, you hold the Option key down.
Yeah, right.
If there's a bootable partition, it'll show up.
Oh, okay.
It will show if it's there.
Right. That's the only way you're going to see that invisible partition will be to boot up. Guys, I'm going to have to run, so let me. We'll get back. It's been good.
Thanks, Robert.
Robert,
have a good one.
I'd like to. Since we've still got the board members here, I'd like to run an idea about across everybody real quick for consideration and so forth. The other day I heard a news thing, I don't even know what station it was, that there was a survey done And according to this survey, about 25% of the people who have always had PCs and are considering new computers are now considering seriously buying Macs instead of PCs, which, if that is true, means that there's going to be a lot of people migrating over to Macs. And it occurred to me that maybe we should do some sort of campaign to try and attract some of these new Mac users to the club. Maybe if there's some way that the Apple stores would let us put flyers in or something. What do you guys think about that?
How many times have we tried this, Steve? How many times have we been nailed on this one over the years?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Steve,
is there any
muted.
other way
You're
we
muted,
could maybe advertise it for people who are migrating?
How are you going to find those people, though? That's the crux.
The thing is, guys, Greg was saying, I've been with this club for 36 years now, and we've had some beautiful designed flyers on really nice paper and all that stuff, and it was great back in the days. But the thing is, the younger people don't need us, and the thing is that, you know, keeping our little group, you know, the size it is, I think is plenty fine. The fact that we're able, you know, Greg found this Zoom program that is fantastic. And my cleaning lady was just here and looking over, she sees all the people talking. And I put it on mute and I said, now Bruce is in back east, and there was Janine, she's in Oregon, and a couple of other people.
Bob in New Mexico.
Yeah. And so
Diane's up in Glendale.
Yeah. The thing is that who was in Glendale?
Diane, my friend Diane Racy.
Oh.
Hi, Diane. Diane and I have been part of the Southern California Council of Camera Clubs forever and a day.
Oh, God. So
yeah, back in, I think, what, 89, 90, you were president?
Something like that, I think.
Yeah.
My brain doesn't go back that far anymore.
I mean, you know, when Greg and I were talking this over about shutting the club down, and he said, you know, I'm going to see if we can do it remotely. And it's really, other than the fact that I got up at 9:30, is a good idea, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay,
and
now that's our test. Next month, we all start calling Steve at 6 o'clock in the morning. Every 5 minutes, we call Steve on his cell phone or his house phone to make sure he's awake by 9.
Well, I can wait till 9.
I got one statement. I got to let everybody know this. I have a neighbor who the kids all come out. You know, they have 4-year-old little girls and stuff in the neighborhood. They all get together on his driveway. And last night he was saying, you know, what are your guys going to think? Your son went to work for the other company. And Mark finally took a job over at Microsoft store in Mission Viejo. But
you know what? You got to work out. You have to pay the bills somehow.
That's right. Because
there's nothing smarter than knowing. There's nothing smarter than knowing your enemies.
There you go.
That's it, Robert. Right. But the first thing he did was he came home with a bag in his hand, and I said, "What's in there?" And he says, "A Surface, a keyboard, and one of the pens." And he said, "My supervisor said if I make it past 60 days, it's mine."
Oh,
and
that's
it's like,
pretty good. Nice and
by the way, did you guys all hear about the Consumer Report basically coming out and saying not to buy the Surface or any of the Microsoft laptops because they're having a super high failure rate around 2 years out of warranty?
It's all about the power supply, but it's all good.
Listen,
anyway, I got an idea.
I got an idea to share with you about this. You know, on Facebook there is a Macintosh group.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, why can't we put a Mac group on Facebook? And then
who wants to volunteer to do it? I don't want to be the only guy doing anything anymore.
Okay. Well, no, I'm just saying.
Did you just volunteer, John? I heard John volunteer.
No, but what we can do,
John,
hold on a second. Hold on a second. Now, what we can do then is we can put little, what do you call it, a single insert into the standard Facebook thing saying, you know, if you're interested in Macintosh, come over to this thing here. I don't know how that works with Facebook, but you should be able to do that because I've seen people advertising products on Facebook.
No, I think that's a great idea. We should do that.
Okay. Well, I'd be happy to try to set that up.
We'll let you, John. Why don't you do that?
Okay, I will.
The link that was in this mail is supposed to be our permanent link from here on in. So
is it really
supposed to be?
Okay.
Which means any of you can use that anytime other than we're paying for that 365 days a year, even though we're only using it for 12 days, 3 hours at a whack.
Right.
So if, John, you want to shoot the breeze with Janine and Donald and Larry, you guys could get on the phone or via email and say, hey, let's all click on this link on such and such a time at such and such a day, and the four of you can carry a conversation. Okay. I don't really care as long as you don't do it when we're doing our meetings.
But I really think that social media is the way to get a hold of people these days.
I do too, but so I pulled everybody that I knew had a Mac out of my camera club members, and that's why Diane's with us today.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then 2 or 3 other people whose names I didn't recommend or didn't recognize I think came from the motorhome user group Sprinter forum that are leisure trend, and I went ahead and put a note up saying, hey, I co-host a show that's the second Saturday of, and I put it all out with the words free. And believe it or not, within a couple of minutes, somebody sent back, this is not the place to advertise something you're trying to sell. And I said, I'm sorry, Eugene, couldn't you read the word free?
So I think
2 of the people that were on, and I sent them private emails with their accounts while we were here. Who is this? So I could get an idea. Didn't get back to me or didn't realize it. But I think they were from that group because I put down anybody who's a Mac user. If you're traveling around the country, you've probably got your Mac or your iPad or your iPhone with you. You're more than willing to join us for free.
Right.
And listen in on the conversation or join in on the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Because the Zoom setup that we currently have right now is good for up to 100 participants.
And you can get Zoom on an iPad, right?
Yes.
You can get it on an iPad, on an iPhone, on a Linux box, on anything. It doesn't make any difference.
All right.
One of my friends who was on 1 month before, he's not a Mac user, he's on a PC. He's a PC user, and Danny joined. I used to work with him in Hughes 30 years ago.
Yeah.
He joined us last month. He just couldn't make it this month and sent me an email last night to tell me so.
Okay,
but
Greg, if I can jump in just a second. Stuart is now using Zoom with the S4C exhibition.
Good for him.
We are now doing everything remotely. We judge it.
I love that because, quite honestly, I hate driving anymore, Diane.
Well, yeah, in LA traffic, yeah. But, we do everything remotely by ourselves, and then Joanne sets up a time that we do a video conference, and we can look at images, we can score, we can choose, we do the medal round and everything in the comfort of our home.
I know.
Isn't that great? That's brilliant.
There was a guy in the bottom, it said Bob's iPad, and he was sitting there with no shirt on, and I was going to say, hey, no shirt, no service.
No shirt, no shoes, no service.
Put a shirt on. Yeah, so at least, and this is probably the second time I've worn this crazy thing. But anyway, it's been really good to see everybody again.
Well, like today's the first time that Tom Mattis joined us. How you doing, Tom?
Hey.
Who is this?
Actually, Greg, it's actually my first time too since the testing because
that's true. That's true.
Right after we finished testing and we went into using it for regular real meetings, that's when I had my medical stuff with the second transplant. So,
yeah, what a phony you were, Bruce, getting sick on us all of a sudden. Come on, give me a break.
Medical stuff and conflicts, today's the first day I could finally make it. So I hope won't be the last by any chance. By any
Like
means.
I said, the display that you see on your screen, if you're in the gallery view, can hold up to 25 people. And then if the 26th person, as they talk, they bop in and out. You see the pictures change or whatever.
Right.
But the membership level that we're at right now is good for up to 100 participants. So we got room to grow. And Steve had said, well, who's this guy down here? We don't know who his name is. And I said, I don't care. I just want our membership to build. I want our participants to build up, and maybe they'll feel more comfortable. We had Bonnie Ricalva on a little earlier today, and she was obviously on an iPad or an iPhone because she kept rotating and her picture orientation kept changing.
Oh, I didn't see that.
But at least she was watching. She was watching, you know. So my feeling is, since this costs none of us anything, let's obviously let's try to get as many people as we can, because anytime you get more participants, you learn your memory expansion of capabilities and things expand. And I think it's worth it just from that standpoint.
Greg, one thing, if you would, I'm still waiting for that invoice to pay you.
Yeah, I know. I have it sitting here. I just haven't mailed it to you. I will today.
Okay. Because we do pay, the club pays out of its treasury for the for this feature. Greg was saying we have up to 100 people. That's you buy a year and you get all this other stuff. And so, like he said, if you want to get together, a couple of you, like say John and Frank, you can use this and talk face to face.
All you got to do is, like I said, the only thing I care about is don't well, I can kill you anyway, but don't do it obviously the second Saturday of the month from 9 to noon.
Right.
But if you want to stay on in Kibitz or whatever, Bruce, if you want to shoot the breeze with Bart, you can use this feature anytime you guys want to. Just click on that link and tell him at the other end, click on the link and you two are connected. Yeah. I'll get an email saying back, your meeting has already started with 2 participants. I know what's going on. No big deal. I don't care.
So it's going to be the same.
I just assume more people use it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diane.
Greg, it's going to be the same link then all the time?
Supposed to be. I had an argument with them, and at our level, that's supposed to be that same link all the time.
Okay.
At some point in time, they're going to let me name it to OACC or whatever, but they haven't got it together yet on that.
Oh,
okay. I hadn't noticed if Stuart was using the same link. He just would send us one prior to our meeting.
Yeah, just in case you lose it or whatever it is.
Diane, one comment on your image. If you would, in the future, you just
shut your blinds.
Think a photographer.
Oh, there we go. That helps.
The trouble is this light is right in my face.
No. But I'm saying is the back window, if you close that shade, then whatever available light.
It is closed.
It's
a
translucent shade.
Oh, no.
Well, can I just say something?
I just set the computer up here. Normally, it's been in a room that did not have a window behind it. So,
speaking of lighting and so forth, a couple things. I was noticing the same thing the whole time, Diane, and I was going to suggest, since you're a photographer, you probably have an umbrella light you could probably set up there with a scrim on it so you don't blind yourself. Might help. I've been experimenting with lighting here, and I'm wondering what people think of it, because I can't really tell on my own screen. I've got on
the lighting's no good, Bart. The lighting sucks because we can still see your face.
No, I've got natural sunlight over here, and I put in the 5600 Kelvin LED spotlights on my track lighting over there.
Well, your picture is the best picture of all of them.
Yeah, your sunlit, your left side is a little, the highlights are blown out.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. But it is a better picture than most people get.
Okay, because what I'm trying to do is figure out how I can put in some front fill, considering the computer's almost against a wall here.
You don't need any front fill.
I don't?
Just tone down what's coming in on your left.
On your left,
okay. My eyes are not in a deep shadow. You can see my.
No, you can see.
You can. Open them up. We can see your.
Let me try something here real quick, though. Let me just try something here. Let me just close down the Venetian blinds a little bit. Does that help with the blown out highlights at all?
It's a little bit better, but still not enough.
Okay.
Your forehead, the side of your forehead and cheek is totally blown, and that side of your hair is
Don't
totally
worry about it, because you look better than the rest of us do.
That's just the side of your face. The main part of your face.
You should put a diffuser up there.
Yeah, these people with their cameras, you know, geez. Just be glad we could sit here and talk like that.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Greg knows I spent 30 years as a school photographer, so.
Oh my.
A kidnapper. We call them kidnappers.
Kidnapper. I did that for about a week once when I was much, much younger, and that was enough for me.
Oh, yeah.
No, in fact, the only reason I retired is Herf Jones that I worked for sold to LifeTouch. I would not work for LifeTouch, and I worked with another company for a year, and the way they had it set up, it was too hard on my back, so I retired and didn't work that fall season, and the next January, they fired everybody that came over from Herf Jones to work for them.
When I did the kidnapping, it wasn't a school photographer. They had me going out to people's homes and shooting the pictures at the people's homes, and it just wasn't worth it in those days.
Okay, did you take a pony along with you?
Hey,
no,
Greg.
I took a live elephant.
To go, and I'm glad, knock wood, that I got through the heart attack, and I was here to see you guys. And
yes, we're very glad about that too.
Only trouble is I went to the cardiologist yesterday, and he's showing me all these blockages, and he's saying might have to do bypass surgery, and it's like,
yeah. Well, they made it a lot better these days. So.
Oh yeah. Anyway, everybody have a good week or month. I mean,
Greg.
Tell me, was it the
yes.
ventricle that was that you had the stent put in?
It was one of the descending arteries that feeds the bottom of the heart.
Okay.
And if somebody doesn't quit that whistling, somebody's got feedback.
That's her bird.
It's the bird. Hey,
just turn the speaker around, guys.
You're giving us the bird.
Greg, I've been trying to get a word in edgewise here for about 5 minutes now.
Yeah, Bruce.
All I wanted to say was the video at my end here is anywhere from very good to excellent on everybody who's been on here. I mean, other than minor local lighting concerns, I think this is more than adequate for the purpose.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yep.
And of course, I'm on a fiber optic line, but I would imagine that doesn't matter too much if you're on a pretty high-speed internet connection, wherever you are. But
as long as you don't drop frames.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to tell what other people's screens look like, other than what they say about it. But.
Are you okay, Greg? You were turning green there for a minute.
Oh my goodness, what happened?
I'm a little warm under the collar here.
Oh, you're playing games, huh? Yeah, okay.
It's an alien presentation.
Hey, I paid for this piece of crap software. I ought to use it occasionally.
What's that? What is that called? That software?
It's called Eyeglasses.
Oh, okay.
And it's like $10 or something like that. And it works with it's zoom and flip and mirror and pinch, and you can save presets. You can save all kinds of effects. You can adjust everything on it. Literally, I can crop it down to a tighter frame or widen it up, whatever I want to do. So,
but you're using the camera on your iPhone, right?
I'm on the FaceTime camera built into the Mac. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Is that spelled EYE or I?
The letter I and then glasses.
Okay. Is that in the Mac App Store or what?
I think that's where I got it, but I'm not sure. But the nice thing is it works with anything anything. So I mean, I've got 2 or 3 plug-in USB cameras, and it'll show up in that list as well.
Wow.
As well as that another program that I've got, which I stopped using at the moment, called Manycam, MANYCAM, that'll let me do like what they call lower third and put text across the bottom of the screen, run a banner, Let you do all that kind of. You can run multiple cameras through it and choose which one. 4 images. You can do all kinds of weird stuff with it as well.
Okay. Listen, I got to get going, but I'll tell you, I'll look into creating a group on.
That'd be great. That'd
Facebook,
be great.
And we'll see if we can't run some little ads on Facebook.
That'd be cool.
Greg, I'll send you the link to that blog entry I talked about too.
Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Email it to you.
All right.
And I'll trash the posters.
Okay, sounds good.
Janine, you're looking good, and your house behind you looks beautiful. I don't recall seeing it.
Come up and visit. It's beautiful up here.
I'd love to. I don't know when we'll get out that way, but maybe someday.
Love
And
to have
Bruce,
you.
we'll see you in a little over a week.
An extra bedroom or two.
Oh, yeah. We have 2 extra bedrooms here, so anybody's welcome to stay with us too. We have an upstairs guest bedroom and a downstairs guest bedroom, so we can accommodate like 2 couples or whatever. But
I think that we should make a traveling
itinerary or
city for people. You know, we can just go around to each other's houses and just enjoy the areas and the people and get our Macs all doing good things together.
See, that's the trick. We need to find somebody at every hot spot across this country that we can mooch off of, you know.
Yes, I like it. I like it.
All right, guys. Well, look, it's been real nice talking to you. I'm going to go ahead and get off because I've got to make a pause for the cause.
Okay,
and,
thanks.
Nice talking to all of you.
Yeah, I want to say thanks, Greg.
Thanks,
Diane. Nice joining. I'm glad we got to see you.
Bit of it was over my head, but it was nice to hear some shop talk about Macs. I guess, as you know, I go back to an Apple II GS, so I've been a Mac user for a long time.
Good for you. All right, Larry, Mario, Donald, Ron, Larry, Tom, Janine, Frank, Bruce, Bart. Nice talking to all of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody have a great weekend. Rest of the weekend. We'll see you next time.
Bye. What is that from Maryland there? Hold it up closer, Bruce. Oh, okay.
Hello from Maryland. I like that.
We need to put pins in a map.
Yeah, my son from Wichita would be on, but he has to work on Saturdays, so he doesn't get a chance. But he's watched a few of the meetings that you put up on video on it. So.
Okay.
Bruce, say hello to Kathy, and we'll call you when we get there.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
All right.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.